What did I try to do? Birds and bees and television, cardboard houses, X-ray vision, many little silly rhymes. It said check your encoder settings. B-frames 2. I don't know why it has them set to 4, but it shouldn't be. Shouldn't be. I don't. Yeah, this is the thing. We are still running through the many little silly rhymes, things forgotten, lost their time. Telephones and silly games, spirits and lots of question marks. This is the funny thing. I just spent like ages, like it genuinely took me full on like over 24 hours just to set up all of the new like stream stuff and all of that. It's really intense. Kind of not fun, to be honest, but yeah, I mean, I did it though. I got through everything, and I've survived thus far. It's just obviously difficult. It happens. Yeah, sometimes things go wrong, and but either way, like what happened? Just to be brief about it, is that I wanted to. Well, I ordered a Stream Deck ages ago. Not ages ago. It really didn't take that long for it to get here. But I ordered one either way. And so I was enjoying having it, and I set it up and everything on one PC. And then I was like, I don't know how to deal with, because before what I had set up was that the studio would run on one PC. I would run on one PC, and then I would game on the other PC and stream off of that same one. And that's perfectly fine to do, because it's like NVENC and all of that does pretty well. Not really an issue with the technicalities and whatnot. But then now that I got the Stream Deck, I wanted to get it all set up so that I had all my buttons in the same place, so I could control OBS and myself from the deck. And it turns out that is a little more difficult than some may have heretofore imagined, and some being me. I had not imagined it to be as difficult as it proved itself to be, but it did. So the big issue wasn't actually like setting up, like, setting the Stream Deck and OBS and everything. It tends to be pretty dang easy. Now the issue was with OBS and the way that OBS handles encoding. And it's not necessarily OBS and everything, because I mean, I was super excited. I was like, ooh, I got oh crap, I didn't even try to use the clip button. I didn't test those out, but I suppose I'll have to see that once I'm digging into VODs and whatnot. That should be fun. So yeah, regardless, the issue was with VP9, and generally it seems as though VP9 works decently all right with OBS. The issue obviously is not with VP9. The issue is with the way that VP9, and this GIF here is really just the culmination of everything right there. Like that is just the way that it be. That's the way that it be. That's the way that it is. Yeah, it's really something. Just everything. It's like, recording, generally just encoding H.264 or H.265, NVENC, or whatever it may be. On this streaming PC, I've got a 1070 in it, and so like it's pretty solid. I mean, right now I've got a my CPU's at like 1 to 2% load. At least OBS says 0.3%, but this says 2%. I don't know how many, because there's a cool plugin on the Stream Deck that tells me how much CPU utilization I'm using, and I may move that over somewhere else so I can see it at all times, which would be fun. Because I don't think I really want to return to this screen all too often, but I don't have room. Anyhow, the funny thing is that is when you run into trouble is when you want to encode transparent video. Now, I was under the impression that my VP9 WebMs were getting corrupted. I was under the impression that I had to basically just do it in ProRes, and so effectively I'm rendering in and editing. Whoa. Don't turn off the computer. That's not going to be good news if that just happens. Yeah, I forgot, because normally I'm running OBS on this, so if I go AFK for a moment, then it's not like that's going to be a big deal. Not anymore, because it's got to be all plugged in and everything. I just realized I'm bloody stupid and I have to swap over. This is the issue. The issue that I was initially really thinking of when I was struggling with, like, I wanted to have it all on one PC was audio, because I knew that I would have to route audio in a way that was going to be a bit frustrating. Hey, that's cool. It's also giga delayed. Wait, really? It's gonna suck. So yeah, I suppose, yeah, if I just had a patch cable, then I could just import that over to that. Because I want to be able to hear the stream, like the audio and everything. Oh crap! Because it wouldn't be able to hear it if it's not. This is the trouble. And I probably should just be using like some sort of a Go XLR or something like that, so all the audio is in the right place. Obviously the difficulty is when you've got all the like multiple sources and everything, and so that makes things a bit difficult. But there tends to be issues with delay if you change the settings, or not necessarily the delay, but the audio will be stuttering and it will be very obnoxious indeed. So it becomes difficult. But regardless, the VP9. So issue is, I wanted to get transparent so that, you know, this is just easier to work with, so I can be transparently on the background. I think most people who do like their source records and everything, they don't really have to do this, but I really wanted to do it because obviously I wanted to do it. And for all I know, I mean, it could be good to encode, because it's such a compressed format, VP9 in WebM, like it's so compressed. The issue is that it doesn't have PCM and it doesn't have the hybrid MP4 stuff. So I think it's also not got the what do you call it? The funny, what is it? The protection, like it'll protect your stream file from being bad or whatever. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, the entire reason is I wanted to get it to be transparent, and I didn't really want it to take up too much space. So it, like, obviously would be ridiculous to be encoding a codec that is intended for what do you call it, for editing, and then to have that editing codec to not be used for editing. Obviously, like, that would be pretty ridiculous. But the entire reason for that is because the editing codecs in you know, I was like, what is it? Do I want to do ProRes? Do I want to do Cineform? Or ProRes isn't supported on this version, and I have to do the custom output FFmpeg if I want to actually get them, because for whatever reason they haven't actually put these in this format and whatnot. And so it's rough. Every single time that I would put a WebM, no matter how I tried to split it, into Premiere, it didn't show up as transparent. And it wasn't until I looked through and was just like, it took me ages and ages just to realize that that for Cineform, for ProRes, alpha channels, perfectly fine. No VP9 WebM alpha channels in Premiere in particular. I'm pretty sure that Resolve's already done it, because let's be real here. DaVinci is far more competent than Adobe, and has a history of doing so. There's a reason why that you've seen DaVinci kind of trolling Adobe when it comes to their piss poor PR in all ways. They've I don't know, they just made like a statement. I mean, it's a good pitch. It's just like, hey, we're a software that is not going to spy on you. And, normally that's like, yeah, I mean, that wouldn't be so good if you were spying. Like, that would be bad. You shouldn't be spying. And it's just like, yeah, you'd think so. But clearly that was not so easy to decide for Adobe, because they were like, well, probably gonna end up doing that. So, but regardless, I mean, there's a lot of things that DaVinci does that Adobe hasn't. But I already ended up updating all of my Adobe products, and then realizing that the reason why I didn't update earlier is because I thought that my proxy files were incompatible with Premiere, when I actually should have realized that that can't be the reason why. It's because there's like a video backend error within the particular version of Premiere that I was installing that apparently had never gotten fixed. And so it was a driver error where not even the studio ready drivers were actually fixing it, and in particular, it's like I didn't even want to install those studio drivers, so it was just a big worthless nothing to me. So it was not a fantastic situation to be in, for sure, but regardless, I figured it all out, and so now I'm running last year's version of Adobe, and there's obviously a reason why I don't actually appreciate doing the dumb Adobe, like, I'm gonna stay updated with everything. It's like that never goes well, staying up to date with Adobe products, because they may just destroy something and then I end up updating to the version that it was destroyed in, which obviously was not a good idea. And I thought I could fix it, but turns out I really couldn't without having some drawbacks there. So now I'm just going to be on no CUDA. You don't get to use your GPU to to play back the video in Premiere, which is just like fantastic. Obviously, like, it's just obviously like the greatest thing that has ever existed to just be playing video with my CPU. But to be fair, I think that due to the fact that Premiere has been such a CPU heavy editor, that has always been an issue, is that they don't really want to use GPU acceleration on pretty much anything. At least, I mean, they want to use it because they've integrated it, but they've integrated it so poorly that it makes me think that they just aren't up for the task. And I don't think, obviously, this is not like a developer problem. I think it's an Adobe allocation problem. I think the developers would be like, well, actually, we would love to fix this issue, but this sort of pragmatists at the top of Adobe just don't want that to happen. So I don't know. Regardless, it is what it is, and it's not great, but you just gotta keep on keeping on and doing what you can, how you can, etc. Regardless, so I was going to get back to this, obviously a bit of a delay there. It's like 15 minutes, but welcome to Draconian Discourse. I'm not certain if I'm going to try to splice all of these episodes together or put them out, maybe like a part 1, part 2, part 3. I don't know, probably would make a little more sense to do something like that. I think I'd had a bit of a short one, and so I was like, I don't know if I want to end up scraping those out like that. So scraping? I don't know why that's something that my brain thought would be braining, but yeah, anyhow, I've got to be heading back over to this video, this delight right here. Oh, right. Don't you love how sometimes things don't function properly? Shut up. I don't exactly recall where I was at. Yeah. So we're gonna go here. That should be all set up, and I might be a little bit bigger because I haven't scaled myself down a little this time. So hopefully that doesn't take up, like, I know I am taking up like a fair amount of the screen by being over here, but you know, it's, oh crap, I don't know if that did something bad. It's worth it. It's worth it to sort of be over in Joe land like this. Yeah, no, you definitely don't want to open 2 instances of that. Die, thank you. Okay. Yeah, hopefully it won't be the biggest issue, but as I say, it is worth it. You get to see more of me, and etc. So, yeah. So I suppose this was about where we were leaving off. He was going on about this tripe, and so we're gonna continue, and I'm going to ensure that the audio levels are proper.
Depending on the conservative dealer den director, capital would be that measure of merit, which means resellers who can sell larger volumes on easily stockable products.
I really hope that isn't audible on the stream, that there's that stupid crackle, because I really don't have much that I can do about it. Like, I already swapped interfaces. Like, I don't know what else you want from me other than to continually like decrease the stupid sample rate and the delay and all of that, which would screw up the rest of the settings that I've already set. And so it's just like, I guess I just have to hope that it doesn't continue like this, because it's just the way that things are, I suppose. Fantastic, wonderful, excellent, all the positive words, but
products win and would possibly attract the larger normie crowd via non-furry incentives.
Yeah,
more likely to push out furries from the furries dealer's den. No, Core. You need to pursue higher moral issues. You need to look into putting God back into cons. Ignoring that you can submit and obtain Christian meetup panels at some major cons, or just set up your own personal prayer meetup anyway. Furry is global, so there can be people who believe in gods with an S or have no affiliation to theistic beliefs at all. So by eliminating...
See, it's a funny thing to, like... This is just a progressive thing. Like, it's just a tick that it's not necessarily, maybe I should actually turn my gain down just a little bit, because I have actually put it into PCM, but I don't know if it's going to be able to be edited out in a proper way. And I do want to actually have my levels generally pretty leveled out. Maybe that would actually, it would actually help if I didn't have a compressor on this. See, this is the thing, a limiter rather. I'm going to turn the limiter off, keep the gain on, because obviously I think that that'll tend to help. So hopefully, if I speak a little bit louder, yeah, that appears to be at a pretty decent level. Though I think the limiter may have, I don't know. But this time, yeah, I think that must be the reason why earlier, because I was like, oh, why is it peaking again? And I went into editing. I was like, I was supposed to be able to like just pull this all the way down. I think the limiter actually forces it to peak. So it would be better to hear it peak on stream than it would be to have that in the file that I'm encoding. Anyhow, yeah, it's sort of a progressive, it's not a tick, but it's definitely something that's it's just frustrating from the perspective of somebody who just doesn't take nonsense. Like, it's just like gods with an S. It's just like, stop it, because it's just this preachy, and that's actually the funny thing, is that like the American left or the Western left is truly the I mean, this is why like Ben Shapiro, for example, will call them woke scolds, is because they're truly the tutters of the now, where we're just, you just said something that was really, you said something ignorant. Yes, you said something ignorant. And it's just like, you don't have to correct these people. I mean, frankly, fictional people who you're responding to. Like, you don't have to to do that. You ought not to forget there's gods with an S with because it's a plural. It's a plural. There are multiple of them, and it's like why? Like why? Why does it have to be semantics like that? Where's my bloody? Did I like drop it? No! Oh no! Oh dear! Oh my! Oh no! I removed it from my bag. Sorry, I wanted to clean myself. Couldn't find the cleaners. Take that into the cleaners. This is going to be a real disorganized episode. I have been wondering, and this will probably be better if it would be worth my time to go through and actually edit with more of a fine-toothed comb on some of these, because it's like, yeah, obviously when you're on the audio only and everything, like you don't want to just be like sort of sitting there waiting for things to happen. So I've cut them a little bit when it comes to just looking at like the waveform. Oh, there's a substantial pause for like a couple minutes there. Clip that one out, and I clip up the front end of the streams, because obviously there's not always a lot going on when that's what you're looking at. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. I do also wonder if I should stop. Don't turn off. Stop. That's obnoxious. Yeah, that's gonna get old real soon, real quick. Yeah, I have been wondering if I should if I should snip them up just a little bit more, just to account for little pauses like that, so I could only get in all the juiciest bits. So anyhow, yeah, it's funny where it's like, who's the theocrat now? And this is obviously a point that I was getting at the last time I spoke on this topic. So obviously it was relevant then, and it's relevant now. That it's like, I'm speaking in the terms of, turns out like the vast majority of the world, the vast majority of all people on the world believe in a single God. And so obviously when you're talking about religion, when you're talking about let's bring God back into schools, a lot of the time, or into schools, into whatever, bring God back into people's lives. When we're speaking in that context, we're speaking in the context of a Judeo-Christian, or in the very least an Abrahamic tradition. The Abrahamic tradition obviously spans back further. That includes Islam. So the three major religions on earth, being Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, and all of their various permutations. Vast majority of the people on the earth believe in God as in a single individual, not really God's plural. And so it's like, oh yeah, good on you, buddy, for sticking up. It's good on you for sticking up for the minority, because there's less people who believe in gods with a plural, with an S at the end, gods with an S at the end, meaning multiple of them. There's less people, so I'm going to pat myself on the back that I'm going to, yes, gods with an S with a plural. Like, it's just like, quit the virtue signaling. Like he mentioned virtue signaling at the beginning here, and it's really funny to see really anybody on the left talk about virtue signaling, because it's like you really have no room to speak whatsoever, because that's like all you do. It's all you do. And the term virtue signaling is mostly an accusation that is thrown from right to left. It's really kind of quite funny when it's done from left to right, just because really the people on the left tend not to actually have and actually put any sort of vested attempt into being virtuous. They just want to pretend to be virtuous, which I suppose is a very uncharitable way to put it, but obviously if we're going to be partisan about it, then that's the way that I see things, is that it's like, do you really think that you're just like being better than everybody just by like, you gotta have those, you gotta look out for those minorities, man, you gotta look out for them. It's like, just stop, really. Moving on. There's not much more to say about that.
Being a con to one religion, that just gets rid of an important space for different people, which...
He says one religion. It's just like, Not necessarily. You put it into one, like just saying one God, people who are just monotheistic, vast majority of people on the earth currently today, vast majority of people still in the US, there's obviously a rise in agnostic and atheistic sentiments for certain, but theistic thinking, and especially monotheistic thinking, is the status quo all around the world at the current moment, and really has been for a significant amount of human history, and human history really, when you go back, monotheism is, I mean, one of the first things that you end up seeing, at least I believe so, because obviously the Abrahamic tradition starts back in, like, bloody how far, like almost as far as we can go when it comes to, like, storytelling. Has there been a religious sentiment that actually believes in a singular God? But it's, I don't know. It's just, again, it's ironic to be talking about something like this, where it's like, you're limiting it to one religion. Why would you limit it to one religion? You could be inclusive of all religions. And it's just like, yeah, bloody speak for yourself, okay? Because you don't do it. I'm saying bloody a lot. I really don't normally say that all the time. Like, you can see on my past streams, I really did not say that a lot. I don't know what it was. I don't know, but it's like, who is being the theocrat here, when it's like you're limiting it to one religion? But you really don't. Do you even necessarily want to have anybody praying, or having sort of like a prayer, like a seminar, or like some sort of a spiritual conversation to be happening, or spiritual exchange to be happening in furry land, in furry conventions? Like, do you actually want that? Because that I'm open to that being from all sides, as I spoke about previously. But I don't actually think that you want that. I think that what you really want is, you want your religion to be on top, and your religion is a religion without a denomination, without a face, really. And it's something you actually see sort of all over the place, that I mean, perhaps it's just in the sense that there isn't a name for something until historians go back, and it's been, like, around for a certain amount of time, and there may be sort of a cultural there may be sort of a cultural name for something or other, but you really don't have one kind of set in stone for a particular movement until later on. So I don't know if, like, wokeism is going to end up being like a label that people use one way or the other in future. But it's interesting that it's like, when it comes to schools of thoughts, when it comes to ideologies, when it comes to worldviews, you can have a religious worldview in the sense that, you believe in something that's not necessarily provable, but you know that you can't really bring other people to, you have to convince people in order to see things your way. And so the convincing is done through whatever proofs that you have. And so the most, currently as it stands today, the most religious thought, and what I mean by religious thought is, I mean, evidenceless, baseless, 100% faith-based, or at least predominantly faith-based, the most dogmatic, I should say, religious thinking sentiment is coming from the left as it stands today, and as it stands for, I mean, a fair amount of time previously. It really is not coming from the religious people in America, or the religious right in particular, and generally certain religions tend towards conservatism, so it sort of depends on what your view on that is, I suppose. But in pretty much always, there's no evidence to suggest, because when it comes to proofs about God, there's a lot of ways for reasonable minds to disagree, because there's a lot of proofs that really are just simply a priori and not inherently viewable. and so many people, if you look for it, what you want to look for, you're probably going to find it. Seek and ye shall find, I suppose, is the way to put that. But for many people, you know, reasonable minds can disagree on whether or not God exists due to the fact that it's kind of up in the air. It's something that you can't see. It's something that you can't feel and measure. So it is something that is supernatural, and you are believing in something that is supernatural, in the sense that you can't put a sort of a, what's the word, like a can on it. I don't know why that was in my brain. You can't really cap it off as something that totally makes sense from sort of that way. So there's going to be people who just can't possibly believe that due to their risk assessment or whatever information, whatever proofs they are looking at does not actually support that conclusion. Reasonable minds can disagree on that. Reasonable minds, I really don't know if they can, because confirmation bias is not reasonable. It's inherently irrational. Like not in the sense that that, I mean, if it was irrational in the sense that human beings are irrational, like I believe everybody behaves scientifically in the sense that you record with your amygdala, you record all sorts of events, and then with your prefrontal cortex you process them. And so sometimes what happens is you say, this is so deep set in what I've recorded that this is a truth that can't possibly fit into the logical explanation I've got for it, so I have to reject that proof or dismiss that proof because it doesn't actually fit into the box that I've drawn, and that's confirmation bias. So obviously that can go either way. The sort of so that is irrational in the sense that you aren't actually thinking about it as logically as you should, where it's like, yeah, but I really would like it if this were true. I just haven't found a reason to explain why this is true yet. That's not actually how the scientific process works. You actually have to have the hypothesis, and you don't set out to prove it. You set out whether or not the hypothesis is true. And if it's not, if it's disproven, if it's somewhat disproven, if it's recontextualized, you actually have to just go back and, you know, find what is the conclusion. And I think the vast majority of the time, the conclusion can actually end up being something that that fits within a worldview in a way that is not unhealthy, in a way that helps people to become more together because there is more truth that is available. The reason why there are not, we've got all the information of human history directly in front of us, and the reason why we actually can't take that information and use that to the point of like, well, we've got all the info, so clearly we should not be disagreeing about this situation because the info's right there. There are people who still want to cling to a certain thing that they were taught or that they learned. Either it's taught or it's learned, but we learn it either way. Like they just want to cling to that, and so because the proof points towards a certain direction, they don't want to. I mean, it's not objective. Like that is the big reason why so much information, and yet everybody doesn't really want to concede that there is information that actually may not go along with the narrative that they're painting or the explanation that they want to the box they want to put everything in. That inherently is something that happens far more often on the left than it does on the right, for many a reason. And I think this is one of them, is because it's like, why are you going to be so offended that there was that people in the context, because I mean, I don't know. I don't even know who in what context was saying this. For all I know, they came from like Tennessee, or somewhere else in the Bible Belt, where it's just like, yeah, I think it would actually be a good idea to bring the gospel truth back into this, so that everybody can be sort of integrating that into everything. Like it could just be a very widely accepted position to take over there, whereas it may not be the same for for, you know, somebody from this school of thought, perhaps. So I object to the idea here that this, I don't know, that it's a problem for people to be trying to open these things up and in the way that they've mentioned wanting to open them up. It's just like, you know, we can have this disagreement in a theological sense and still coexist, and I would love to do that with people, but actually it's them who don't want to. It's them who don't actually want to participate in that sort of a challenge of like, hey, the coexisting challenge, like, let's do that. It's just a little bit tiresome to hear sort of the preaching and then be like, but you aren't allowed to preach. It's just like you're doing the exact same thing in actually a lot more of an encroaching way. I can't see that's the issue with the entire. I have to look up and everything, like, it's just a little bit out of the way. I think it's the brightness that I've actually applied to the monitor. I'm actually going to turn that up. I shouldn't do this stuff on stream. I should have calibrated this earlier, but clearly didn't do my due diligence here. I don't want to hurt my eyes later on because it's just bright right now. But so yeah, let's continue on.
Makes a worse experience for those people who make the things furries want to see, meaning the cons experience degrades even more over time. Not great. A conservative could just be arguing some major cons don't let religious panels go through and that we need more religious freedom, until there's a Church of Satanist panel that they spot. Right.
Yeah, and this is what I responded to last time as well, where it's just like, no, I don't really care. Like, if we're going to integrate, because I mean, when it comes to religious freedom, it's for everybody. So yeah, if we're going to integrate one sort of view into the spotlight, then we're going to integrate everybody into the limelight, the spotlight. We're gonna have everybody show up, and there's going to be a panel with a Satanist and a Christian and a whoever, like just everybody's going to be speaking. Now, is that something that is necessarily good for sort of a furry convention inherently? Well, it's like, you know, what's the relevance? I mean, I certainly think that there's a lot of relevance that you could tie it back in, but it will be something productive. I'm all for discourse. That's why I'm here. So yeah, it's like not like that's a problem with me. I wouldn't pretend as though there aren't people who are religious that wouldn't bother, but I would argue that there's far less conservatism in theocracy than there is in you know, the alternative being religious freedom. You know, religious freedom is kind of inherently conservative, especially in the Judeo-Christian tradition. So.
Right. At every point, conservatives don't want to improve a convention. They just don't want people to live their lives unless it's according to their very specific specifications.
Is that so? Is that so? It's just rich once again. Like, I don't want to sound like a broken record, because the last stream that is one of the things that I'd was it the last one or was it the last one? I don't know, but no. It's just not the case, because when it comes to specific parameters that are being set on the way that other people should live, it's really not about like who's the one actually trying to do that. If we're going to be 100% objective here, who is the one actually trying to do that? Is it the group of people who are saying leave us the hell alone, or is it the group of people saying you are not allowed to do this? Because I don't really see a lot of that on the right, religious or otherwise, and there are plenty of people who are religious who are not really on the right in a principled sort of way. It's really not the religious right that are doing this, and I think genuinely the proof is sort of in the pudding with this type of a video, where it's like you want to set specific parameters on the way that other people are, and you are currently gatekeeping the entire furry community and you don't want conservatives in them, and you've liked comments that say that, and you've tweeted about it, and you've replied about it, and you've talked all about this idea that it's like, I want to be a gatekeeper. I don't want conservatives in the furry fandom. You can have something else. That was one of the do conservatives do anything for anyone except themselves? I don't know what world you live in, buddy. There's plenty of things in the comment section that clearly proves that this is a very poor faith intention behind all of this entire discourse and this entire video. There really is no goodwill here. Like, you were trying to say right now that conservatives want to set parameters on the way that other people can live, and we are specifically talking about furry conventions. And it's like, okay, how many conservatives have actually taken control of a furry convention in a way that has significantly affected the enjoyment of people? And obviously the free market bears that out, because people are like, yeah, you kind of ruined the con, I'm not going anymore. And then either the con has to correct itself, or it ceases to be a mainstay, ceases to be profitable, and may even just straight up go out of business if you let that go on for long enough. These things don't just sustain themselves. If they continue to behave poorly, they will continue to fail, or at least go into the direction of failing. How many times has a conservative taken that route with something? Because, to my understanding, and I wouldn't even call this conservative, I would just call this like sort of majoritarian. And I don't even think I would necessarily call it right wing. I would call it more close to off center. This sort of like, whatever was it free for all with everybody who'd shown up was Jason Effects and the Furry Raiders, and like all of these wacky groups that are really quite fringe and quite cringe. Like, just they all show up, and they it's a bit of a disaster of a con. It's probably not very profitable at all. But all of the people that are generally both. Fringe people generally drive out normal people, and so it's like, are you going to castigate everybody on the right for the fringe people who really aren't even conservative? It just fits into your box. It's just like, oh, I want you in the box of that I've drawn out for conservatives, because you make them look really bad. It's just like, really, like, that's the funny thing, is I don't even have to do that for the left, because they do it to themselves constantly, because they never rebuke people who are bad. It's like, there's plenty of stuff from, I don't know, someone like Jason Effects, of like, I don't know, whoever we're going to talk about, that I would say, yeah, that is like sus as hell, and I would not be wanting to involve myself with somebody like that, and I wouldn't really want to engage in conversations or whatnot with somebody who's kind of had such a history as that. Plenty of controversial things. Now, I don't know if I would, like, would I speak with just sound effects? Like, possibly. The issue is that I would have to do a significant amount of research and gather data on the type of things that and whether or not it would be productive in the first place to actually discuss these types of things with somebody like that. I don't really know much ideologically about just sound effects, other than the fact that he is kind of just an anti. He just like wants people to like let him do his thing and leave him alone. And I mean, I don't know, he just seems like a walking middle finger to me, and that's what a significant amount of that is. It's just I'm being edgy, I'm being offensive and whatnot, and doing that for the sake of doing that. It's not really right nor left, it's just edgy. Perhaps you could put that more into sort of the worldview of more of a libertarian, because it's like I just don't want to deal with other people, but it's not necessarily right nor left, because obviously it doesn't fit into that dichotomy of equal rights versus equal outcome on the right and the left respectively. So it just doesn't really make sense. But from its face, once again, to tie this back in, you are gatekeeping, and then you are blaming the people who you are gatekeeping, really projecting, saying that, the pot meat kettle, you guys are responsible for wanting to control other people's lives, but also I want to castigate you from the entirety of the furry fandom, and I'm going to do so in an extremely uncharitable way. It's like, okay, cool. Like, maybe you could have just said that. Wasted so much time trying to get there with all of this meaningless nonsense, like, that really doesn't even prove anything.
They want to control you. But that's just my opinion.
That's just my opinion. They want to control you, but that's just my opinion. You're a pussy. Like, seriously? You should actually know what you believe and why you believe what you believe. Because if you don't know why you believe what you believe, then why the hell do you believe it in the first place? Why should you continue to believe something when it's just like, I don't know, it's just my opinion, man, like, calm down. It's just like you're going to say something incredibly inflammatory to say that conservatives, they just want to control you. But that's just my opinion. It's like, you're a pussy. You're a pussy. Who wants to control people? You are actively trying to stand at the gate and saying, oh, you believe in things that I don't like, as he said, infamously at the beginning of this, that I just don't like. You have ideas that I don't like, and I'm not going to have any conversations with you, and I'm not going to try to understand, and I'm not going to do anything within the realm generally of understanding any of this. I'm just going to label and dismiss. You want to control people? You're an authoritarian. You're bad. Out. Who wants to control people? You want to stand at the gate and tell people who you disagree with and who you clearly don't understand. I don't even think there's much for you to disagree with in the first place, because you clearly don't understand who you're disagreeing with. You don't know. You have no idea. You couldn't tell me what I think if your life depended on it. Like, genuinely, like, sit down with reasonable people and discuss these things with them, or unreasonable people, as long as they're not going to, like, hurt you for sitting down with them. Like, it's just ridiculous. And it's rich, and it's cowardly. It's dumb. Like, that's funny. It's funny that I had paused right at that moment where it's just like because I think I'd gotten, like, relatively fired up in the previous one, but, like, I had paused right before he had actually said, but that's just my opinion. That's just my opinion, man. Seriously, like, I am done with that. I am absolutely finished with that statement in and of itself. We gathered it was your opinion, man, and there's not much fact or evidence to back it up, so piss off.
I don't want to bring up real-life examples like free-for-all. That would be mean to point to a conservative con that not only crashed and burned.
Yeah, I really don't think I would call that conservative. Like, I don't know, the name might sound conservative because it's talking about freedoms, but just like, it seems to be something that the left has forgotten entirely. Just like, what are those pesky odd things you keep waffling on about? Freedoms? You don't need those. Yeah, and so the Chesterton test really doesn't work when this is the situation. This is the way you deal with people.
But was a Lord of the Rings saga-length backstory of a train wreck. Returning to the original point of this video. So are we going to actually, like, say that all conservatives within the furry fandom are responsible for that event? Or is it just the people who managed it and the people who showed up? Because when it comes to the people who managed it and the people who showed up, wasn't a lot of people. Like, I'd venture to hazard a guess. I'd hazard a guess that there are far more people within the furry fandom who don't really speak up about these kinds of things. This is part of the reason why you see that conservatism doesn't really manifest itself in many ways culturally until, because I think you can see conservatism as a sort of a hulking sleeping beast where it's sitting there, it's in the grass, it's a snake. It's a snake. It's a big old snake, like on the Gadsden flag. And it's sitting there, it's sleeping, it's minding its business. It'll amble around, it'll get up, it'll go eat a rat or two. Maybe occasionally it picks a fight with one particular individual. Not necessarily picking a fight, but, like, I don't know, if you come up to it and try to aggress it, then it's going to be like, piss off, I'm going to bite you, and you better leave me alone, otherwise I'm going to release the venom. But when the snake is sleeping and it's just minding its own business, it's not hurting anybody and it's not doing anything. And that's, I think, the vast majority of people in the US in particular is they actually benefit from what the roots of the American government are, and they are inherently right-wing in the sense that they are equal rights, not equal outcome.
inherently they benefit from that, and so they just sit around thinking, yeah, you know, things are pretty good, I'm just living my life and I gotta worry about me, and so they do whatever they're doing. And obviously this is why you end up seeing so many memes about this type of a thing, and I suppose it's about time that I pull it up on the place over here. Hopefully Bridge won't lag out my entire PC. It's gonna be interesting, because it's weird to see that my core clocks and my CPU usage and whatnot on my my main PC are just not really firing up all that much. What is it called? Yeah, this is why I wasn't using the newer version of Bridge, is it's slow as balls. It's not Bridge's fault, it's the fact that, well, I mean, it's something about Bridge, but it's also because of hard drives, which I am attempting to phase out. I just haven't got the money to replace them. Why is it opening that up in Photoshop? It's a JPEG, you prick. Like, what are you doing? Don't open that up in Photoshop, you dumb piece of... That is so stupid. It's like, I'm going to open it in Photoshop. Why? Why would you do that? That's bloody stupid, isn't it? There we go. See, I finally managed to pull the stupid thing up. This is a clear example of it, where it's just like, I mean, at the beginning of the founding of America, there were about, or at least the colonies, among the colonies, the American colonies, there was about 33% of people who wanted to, I mean, they were Tories. They were sort of British conservatives, in the sense that they wanted to conserve the king's rule and the status quo, which is not the definition of conservatism now. They were, at least American conservatism now. Then about 33% of them wanted, were separatists, in the sense they were wanting to separate away from that. And then about 33% of them were just like, nah, I mean, it is what it is. I'll just continue doing what I do. And that I think seems to be the way for a lot of people. Today is I mean, the split is about the same. The thing is that the more you behave in that, it's like you are going, the more that you aggress the people in the middle, the more you are going to push them towards whatever the opposite of your view is. So obviously the left is going to be freaking out about things, and yep. But it's like, yeah, Wizard game bad, modern audiences, your favorite streamer has it coming. What is Custodes always had women? Apathy is hate, blah, blah. So it's like, you know, clearly they're not apathetic anymore. I don't even know what this is. You know, it's specifically talking about, what's it called? Yeah, Wizard game. It's talking about Wizard game. It's talking about, oh, it's just like, oh yeah, these people are just evil for playing a video game. These people just, it's just like, no room for nuance, because we've got to just like separate off into these ridiculous coalitions, these stupid like simplifications of actual worldviews. It's just like, it's hard enough trying to actually overcome the sort of biological difficulties of, because I mean, biologically we don't want to have nuance. Biologically, we're all allergic to nuance, and we actually have to fight that. I mean, there's plenty about our mental states that we have to sort of fight. So it's, I don't know, it's just a bit funny, because it's like, it's difficult enough, but like, you've just turned all of the people who didn't care into people who don't like you, by, I don't know, handing them opposition, really. And I mean, this is the funny thing, that it kind of happens all the time. Like, what's a good example of a influential conservative being, what's his name? Andrew Breitbart. Now, unfortunately, his news publication was kind of overtaken by some really quite fringe people, and it's a shame, because Breitbart originally was just sort of the biggest anti-bully ever, and would really just challenge people for all of their bullying tactics in sort of the socio-political realm every single time it came up. So it's sad that it sort of went to the wayside in that sense, and went to a lot more of a sort of fringe authoritarian, non-conservative, non-equal rights position. But regardless, Andrew Breitbart himself became a conservative when he saw what they were doing to Clarence Thomas, Joe Biden, Anita Hill hearings. That he called it a modern day, not a modern day lynching, but he called it a I don't know. He did call it something like a. He compared it to a lynching in some sort of a sense, and he said, "I would rather die than give up on this." And it's just like, do you really think that there wouldn't be such a heavy sentiment for conservatism if people would just calm down about things? If people would stop trying to use government to cram down things, if people would stop trying to use, bully tactics in order to shut people up, if people would stop gatekeeping like this. And so obviously the major point that I'm making here is that every single time you go and you poke the bear, eventually you're going to get some claws. Eventually you're going to end up paying for it, because you're going to turn everybody against you. And as I say, every single time you've got, what's the word? For every good person you turn away from your cause, or from you, for every, if you make an enemy out of good people, there are going to be no good people left. And then everybody's going to be your enemy, whether they're good people or they're bad people. So maybe you should actually find the people who are good, and you should say, all right, I may disagree with you about this, but you're a good person. I'm not going to, try to destroy you in this sort of a way. And it's like, I don't understand. This is the issue with sort of the tribalism and the political tribalism. Obviously, the collectivist sentiment is generally getting worse and worse in all walks of life. But it's the issue that you're gonna run into pretty heavy and pretty quick is when people can't even just sit down and speak with each other. I'd had this sort of an issue where at not at Thanksgiving, but at a family outing, where it's just like, oh no, you can't say that because you've got family members who disagree, and it's just like, why? Like, we can't. It's like we do love each other, don't we? Like, we're still family, right? Like, we can speak about these things. We're adults. Like, it's not something where I'm trying to be dogmatic. I'm just calling things like I see it, and the fact that we can't call things like we see it and just have respectful discussions anymore is really what I think is sort of the poison in the country. You can really tune into any sort of a right wing panel for discussion, online, in person, like really anywhere, and there's going to be a massive amount of disagreement, but they choose to coexist with each other because it's like, well, you're still human, you're still a human being, unless you're not, obviously, because if you're not, then you're also welcome. But I just don't understand how we get back from this. How do we get back from this sort of like, I'm gonna make an enemy out of every single person, and I'm just gonna be mad whenever they finally tell me to piss off about it. It's just that's what this is. That's what this is. I can guarantee that if people played their hands right, and were, I don't know, more reasonable or pervasive or whatever term you want to use, that I wouldn't have been such a hardcore conservative. But this big old reason why Gen Z is the most conservative generation, will only get more conservative as time goes on, because statistically that's what happens. It's because they're sick of everybody's BS. They're sick of being treated in such a nonsensical way, and they're starting to actually call it like they see it. Because when the status quo tends to be, when everybody tends to be on sort of the side of I don't know, on one side, and they're in prevalence, the pendulum swings back the other way. And it swings back the other way because people can't just be normal and keep it sort of in the center. And this is what happens. This is where we end up, where we've got people being, just preaching, and just sort of everyone being sick about it. At least I am. I don't know about everybody else, but I can certainly say that I am sick of it. Frank Cloud's pussy. Yeah, good one. Incredibly mature. What in the Apple TV? Yeah, that's funny. Kind of is mature, isn't it? Yeah, no, it kind of is. What, listen to me? Why should I listen to you? What? Seriously, why? Tell me. Explain to me why I should. How would you feel about coming in your podcast? Because I will do something. You will do something obnoxious. So amazing next month. Oh yeah, tell me all about your plans. Let me hear it all. Did Twitch change stuff? Like, I swear they must have changed things. That's strange. Yeah, are you going to make me famous, or are you just going to continue yipping at my heels like a little chihuahua? I don't know. Yeah, they definitely did change something. That's actually weird. So what is this? Things are just bothering me about my why did Twitch move stuff around? Like, was there did I miss something? It's like now I just have to open up like OBS on my main PC because I don't know if it's just like an issue with not being like properly logged in or whatever. Because it looks to be like basically the same. They don't have banning in here anymore. Like, this is what's confusing me. Like, did they swap it over to like, did they change it so that like you can't get banned anymore? You can just like restrict? Is that what it is? Oh, don't ban me, don't ban me. Yeah. This is weird though. Why is it that like there's no ban button anymore? Because it's like I can just make it so that I can only see your stuff. Oh no, there is a button. Is it not over here then? It should be. I'm logged in. I'm logged in over here. Should be just right there. It's strange. I seriously don't understand like anything that you type. And I haven't like directly spoken a word to you in months because you just want attention. The only reason is because for some reason bloody actually, it must be something to do with my my browser dock or something like that. That is strange. That is a bit of a strange thing. Because you would think if I were logged in, then it would just function perfectly properly. But clearly not, which is weird. No, I don't get it. Oh well. I mean, part of that is just rain clouds bussy. I mean, that's the only, if anybody's gonna come on my stream and like try to aggress me, then in the very least make it something funny like that, because that's funny. But it's like I'm kind of sick of the entire aspect of like, hey, I want your attention, and then it's like, what? And then it's nothing every single time. It's just nothing but you being an obnoxious little child every single time. Like, I'm kind of done with it. kind of fed up with that, because it's like I have better things to do with my time, all right? Like, if I had actual people who wanted to talk to me for reasons of wanting to talk with me and like engage with me and, I don't know, learn a thing or two or interact in some sort of a mutually beneficial way, then like, I don't know, that'd be interesting. That'd be funny, you know. I would probably, you know, take that where it's like, oh, there's somebody who's saying, who's naming themselves something like that, creating an alternate account just to tease me. I mean, that would be funny. That would be kind of something that would be in good, I don't know, you know, people who actually like know each other and get along with each other. You can bust each other's balls all the time, like it's fine, you know. But you don't actually care or are told to do anything like that, because all you want to do is be obnoxious and get, you know, reactions from that. So you don't really want to give the bullies what they want. So anyhow.
That I need you guys to comment on. I'm genuinely asking,
do
conservatives contribute anything to the furry fan?
You would not. The entire reason that you posted this is because you wanted everybody to suck your dick, and you wanted to continue gatekeeping. You wanted everybody who agreed with you to voice out about, oh, this is such a good video, and your virtue has been signaled all over the place, and you wanted everybody who agreed to do that, and then you wanted everybody who disagreed you wanted to make an example of them, saying, this is a person who we are, you know, gatekeeping from. This is the reason why we gatekeep, is because of this person in particular. We're gonna make an example of you so I can, you know, actually enforce my theocracy. That's what it is. That truly is what it is. Don't pretend like this is in good faith. You actually haven't earned any good faith. You kind of have to earn that, and you haven't done a single bit of earning that in this case. There's none of that happening here, because this is all that this is just like, I'm gonna preach about, wow, those conservatives, they're so useless. Anyway, I'm genuinely asking, do you think that they're not useless, or do you think that they aren't useless? Because I don't actually see how they're not useless, because clearly they're useless, and I hate them for everything that they stand for. But maybe you disagree, and so I am genuinely asking, what do you think that they can actually bring to the table? It's just like, you could just say that they're useless in that, and just leave it at that. Like, you don't have to ask people for their opinion on it, because you clearly have your own. Like, I just don't understand why you even made the video in the first place if you were going to constantly prattle on back and forth about this. It's just, make up your mind. Are they worthless? Do you hate them? Do you want them to be completely outside of the fandom and outside of the, what do you call it, the general debate, the Overton window? Do you want them to be considered outside the Overton window, or do you want to actually have conversations with these people and understand them better? Because if you actually wanted to have conversations and understand them better, then you would state your position, and then you would say, I'll have discussions with you. Doesn't mean I'm going to change my position just because I had a discussion with you, but it does mean that I do want to actually hear from you. I don't think you made this in the faith of actually wanting to have your opinion potentially changed, because you don't want to hear other people's opinions. You want people to worship you about yours. That's all this is, clearly. Like, you don't get to claim this. You really don't.
Especially for conventions. I know there will be folks who will instinctively say, there are many reasons conservatives would and do improve cons, so you just need...
It's not instinctive. It's really not instinctive. It's completely ideological. Like, this proves that you've never spoken with anybody who actually has a mature conservative, ideology, rather than just sort of having a knee-jerk reaction to these sorts of things. And regardless of whether or not just because you've had conversations with people who you identify as conservative doesn't mean that those people are conservative, and doesn't mean that they are that you even listen to them in the first place. Because I can guarantee there are plenty of people in every single person's life who, if you spoke down and you talked to them about conservatism, and you were just like, I don't know, if you went to somebody who voted Republican, and you say, are you conservative? And they'd be like, yeah, I'm a conservative. And you sit down and you talk with them politely, kindly about some of these things, you would actually get a better idea of this. But they don't want to do that. And there's really no examples that they can point to, especially in the furry community, I suppose. There's no true examples that can be indicated in this context. It's just like, so you got free for all. Well, doesn't really seem very conservative to me. It was just whatever it was, but it wasn't really conservative if you wanted to nail it down on sort of the because sort of my definition of conservatism has involved a lot of different things, but I think if I wanted to put it, to pin it down to just one inherent concept, it is rights, responsibility, acts, accountability, and that's it. You can't have one without the other. If you have the right, and there's a responsibility that comes along with that right, you can act, and once you act, you must bear accountability for it, no matter what the consequence is. Sort of everything is kind of downstream from that. And just simply under that banner, if that's what we are going to be defining conservatism as, and that's generally I would define conservatism as. I think the sort of conservative, the mainstream right would generally agree with that. There's all sorts of room on the right, quote unquote, either the center right, for people to disagree, because there's people who are more on the authoritarian side, on the protectionist side. There's Tucker Carlson's and Donald Trump's who are on more of the economic protectionist side, and there's Ben Shapiro's, who I would say are truly the conservatives' right political mainstream, in the sense that that's actually sort of the heart of conservatism. Like, obviously it doesn't mean it's perfect. Nobody's perfect. I can't speak for anybody but myself, but if you wanted to get a good idea of what conservatism is, then that's obviously what I would point to is Ben Shapiro, if I wanted to put it into one person in particular. But it's like, you are going to be dismissive of every single person who you don't understand, because they don't fit into the box that you've drawn for them. And so why draw the box and then be like, but I'm open to the box being, moved around a little bit. I'm open to jostling that up a little bit. I'm open to taking some things out and putting some things in, kind of changing the label on the box. No, you're not. No, you're not. And everybody knows you're not. You've drawn the box. You don't care. Just say it. You're just not. You're too much of a coward to admit it at this point.
Common will instinctively say, there are many reasons conservatives would and do improve cons, so you just need common sense. But pretend I don't have common sense and I need my hand held through this entire process. Explain to me in directly stated...
I mean, I don't think I've pretended like you don't have common sense. The definition of common sense is a very colloquial relative term, because it obviously goes back to Thomas Paine in 76, but like, the term, simply because it was so famous at the time, it's kind of difficult to put that all into sort of one situation, because people repeat words and eventually they lose all their meaning. So it's just kind of a funny thing to be like, pretend I don't have common sense. It's just like, but what I don't even know what you mean by that, because if you're looking at the original perspective from what common sense, what that pamphlet meant in its historical context was, I mean, Thomas Paine was a very one of the foundations of American conservatism, for sure. To be sure, he had a big effect on that. Sort of one of the founding fathers of conservative thought, if not founding fathers of the country. So it's, you know, in that context, is very different than what most people mean when they say common sense. They kind of just mean they kind of just mean like reason. They kind of mean you are a reasonable person, which, I mean, colloquially, it can be a useful term that you can describe to people, but I don't think that that's not really what it meant at its beginnings. But it's like, I've spoken in a way that, you know, that lays it out pretty thickly on what it truly is. Like, I've explained to you, it's like, yeah, like it's, and I don't really think there's been much of a knee-jerk reaction in that sense. I mean, certainly you could go back to a certain point previously where I had, it was like, you know, what do conservatives actually bring? And then I immediately answer, I'm just like, good ideas. And then I kind of prattle off on a bit of a list there, give a couple, you know, snowball a couple ideas there. Yeah, all of these things would actually be certainly useful to the furry fandom. And I don't know, that's kind of the ironic thing, is that you're going to claim that the entire community, or you're going to claim that everything good effectively is the result of your ilk. It's the result of your people. And obviously I'm no stranger to this, because that's actually where I was going with it, is that, you know, without American conservatism, there's a significant amount of things that you would not have. And I do absolutely believe that, that's part of it, that I don't know, furry conventions is something that is part of it. You probably wouldn't have that otherwise. But everybody wants to take, what's the word? To be accountable. Everybody wants to be accountable when their acts result in positive consequences. Nobody wants to be accountable when their acts result in negative consequences. It's just the natural way of things. You know, is that right? Well, obviously there's a flaw to that, because you probably should be aware of when your actions result in negative consequences so that you can improve your future actions. Obviously, you should be very cognizant of that. It's ironic. I don't know. It's just a little bit rich, as I've said many a time, that this is sort of the spiel that we get, where it's like, oh, you wouldn't have anything that this wouldn't exist if not for the American left. It's like certain aspects of it, to be sure, but I wouldn't really say that furries are inherently like resultant of the American right or the American left. I would say that they're resultant of people wanting to use their inalienable rights, God-given, not God's given, God-given inalienable rights. Because if we're gonna play that game, it's like, no, my religion's right, mine is right. Okay, or I'm gonna be sticking up for the little guy, whatever, right? Like if your entire goal is actually to understand people, this is not the way you do it, regardless.
Policies that would make a conservative convention better than a normal or progressive con experience.
Yeah, I basically had already said, you know, free markets actually lead to a significant amount of innovation, and all of that innovation brings some pretty fantastic things. Now, there's plenty of people who, when it's sort of a niche situation, they really want to gatekeep all of that, but it's like this is something that I'd heard from people in Billie Eilish, where it's like, that was my thing, that was mine. I don't like people. It's just people who like it now, and I don't like. It's like, really, like, other people liking the thing that you like is not bad because they don't, you know, they haven't been here the entire time. You know, just because they don't know as much doesn't mean that that is some sort of a bad thing that now, it's like now we have to deal with all these people who don't actually understand. It's like, well, actually, that's a great learning opportunity. It's an opportunity for you to teach them. Maybe if you were a little less pessimistic, then you would actually look at that as a good thing, where it's like, well, actually, we can coexist with these people. We can invite them in, and we can all share in it. You know, because we hate the word profit, apparently. We can all share in mutual increase in value among all of us. You know, we don't want to profit off of each other, even though every single human relationship with any sort of significance is inherently, to a degree, what is the word? Transactional. There's inherently every single relationship that anybody has with each other. It's mutual. You know, it's a deal. Everybody enters into sort of a contract with everybody they have a relationship with, and if you know, the terms of those contract kind of, they just fall into place, and then, you know, eventually things get unfair and they have to relitigate that contract in a way to sort of pin it down a little bit more to see what is you know, how to actually bring balance back into the relationship. But everybody gets something out of a relationship. You know, in psychology they call it currency, and everybody gets, you know, put something into a relationship on either side. So it's like, you know, I give you this, you give me that, you give me. It's like, you know, there's actually an exchange here. This is the fantastic aspect of interaction with other people, is that you can actually exchange all sorts of things. And so, you know, you can have a relationship that the entire basis of it is exchanging ideas and perspectives. And, you know, you're both profiting from that because you get to actually take in on other people's perspectives. You can have far more complicated relationships where you're exchanging practically your entire life with each other. We tend to call that marriages. We tend to call those marriages, but, you know, it's like, yeah, free markets, everybody benefits. You know, it's really evident in human history. Everybody benefits from free markets. Like, I don't know what sort of protectionism that you want to talk about this, because it's like the one thing that you said is just like, well, I don't know, some conservatives are economic protectionists, and I would agree with them in that. So it's not like I would, you know, I would want to make sure that the economic protectionists stay around. And it's like, yeah, because they're not conservatives. Like, you just genuinely hate everything to do with conservatism that actually that doesn't what's the word? It doesn't fit into the box. It's like, oh, well, I have more in common with you, and so you're a good conservative. It's like, no, actually, that's a bad conservative, because a good conservative is actually going to believe in conservatism, whereas a bad conservative is going to believe in something that is not conservative, like economic protectionism. Anyhow.
Because I think the most common outcome is going to be conservatives whining and never really answering this question, and everyone else
never really answering this question. All right. Because you didn't ask it. You didn't actually want to ask it. Like, this is the not so clever aspect of this, is you're going to go out and you're going to bash a bunch of people, and then you're going to be like, oh, but I'm calling it though. You're going to be complaining about this. You're going to be. It's like, yeah, I wonder why people are actually responding with criticism to you when you say something that's inflammatory and inherently just, you don't actually want to hear people who disagree. I wonder why when you start out a video saying conservatives, they just want to like conserve things, and it's just like, you don't know what conservatism is, and yet you're fighting against it. You've created this idea of, well, no, they don't know what conservatism is. I know what it is, and it's just conserving things. We're going to dumb things down to just the very core of their word. It's like, you know, people going to criticize you for that, and then how do you pre-own that criticism? Oh, well, I'm just going to say that those people who are criticizing me are just complaining about it and they're not actually responding to what I said. No, this is a response to what you've said this entire time. You've been remarkably uncharitable this entire time. You've gone ahead with a predetermined resolution in your mind to say the things that you want to say, which is, I mean, it's fine. You say the things you want to say. You call it like you see it. Don't get surprised when people who think differently will respond to you in a way that says, actually, you don't understand what I think. Like you've not thrown me a single bone here, doggy dog. You've not thrown me anything. I have nothing to go off of other than, wow, this is an incredibly poor faith, and all you want to do is sit here and gatekeep and then call everybody who disagrees with you like part of a Nazi cult. That's literally why I'm here, is because you said that about just like the MAGA slash like conservative slash MAGA Nazi cult or whatever the hell you said. Like, it's why I'm here. It's because, hey, you said something putting all of these people into a single category. I want to see maybe if you have something additional to say when it comes to this. I want to see if maybe you, I don't know. I wanted to counter some speech that I think is ridiculous with more speech, because that's what you do, because that's conservatism, rather than actually trying to gatekeep people. I'm actually just going to criticize in return. I'm going to say, actually, no, don't see it that way. And clearly, if you listened to other people to a single iota, you could still disagree, but you wouldn't actually be able to castigate people in the way that you do. And this is why you've got to know what you believe, know why you believe what you believe, and be able to actually describe why. Because this is what happens when you don't know how to describe why, is you just end up falling into this dogmatic ridiculousness. It's like, this is not productive, and yet here you are pretending that you are the one trying to be productive and that everybody else who disagrees is not trying to be productive. It's like, you are going, what do you even think this is going to result in? What do you think happens? Because I would hazard a guess that you don't like it when people blame you for things that you aren't responsible for. I think that you wouldn't like it when people would say, well, you are just on the left and you're just a progressive, and that means that you XYZ, or that means that you have to be associated with this thing, or whatever it is. You know, and I've sort of bordered on that occasionally, being like, sounds really rich coming from the likes of you, because odds are, when people fall on ideological lines, there are people who tend to fall into those ideological lines pretty hard, and this is a prime example of it. It's like, I want to know what you actually believe about some of these things, because I have a feeling these concepts don't actually play out. I have a feeling it's not about principles when it comes down to it. The only principle is that you just dislike these people because at one point someone was rude to you, as was sort of prodded at on the Twitter originally. Someone was rude to you a long time ago, and you just associated that rudeness. Your amygdala recorded it, and your amygdala says, we got to draw a box. Anybody who reminds you of that feeling when that you had when somebody was like mildly dismissive or rude to you, you know, anytime that happens, you got to get out of there, because those people are just going to be like sort of dangerous to your psyche and whatnot. And you don't even, the prefrontal cortex doesn't even kick in at all. It doesn't come in and say, well, actually, wait a minute, maybe there's something you should be thinking about here. Maybe there's some principles that you should be thinking about here. Maybe you should at least try to understand so that you can pragmatically attempt to convince somebody to your way of thinking. There's none of that here. There's none of that here. You've done absolutely nothing to try to understand conservatives. All you have done is raise the temperature just a little bit. I mean, it's not nowhere near as bad as Destiny saying that, you know, swing state voters who vote Republican should die, effectively. He's celebrating the death of an innocent person who was a swing state voter. Pretty awful. It's not really quite on that level. It's just on the level of like, I don't want to be around conservatives. I don't want to be around them. It's like, okay, if you don't want to coexist, I don't want to coexist either, but don't come to my damn state. Don't do it. Come to a red state, behave like you belong in a red state. Same thing when if you're going over to a blue state. It's starting to kind of be this way where it's like, I kind of want to reinstate a more of a federalistic system where we're not under one federal banner, that actually maybe more power to the states would be a good thing, and then we could actually let those ideas play themselves out and everything, because then we would actually see free markets prevail and good things to be provided in free markets, and then all of the this is the sort of the curse of conservatism, is that every single conservative is going to be sort of forced to pick up the pieces left by people who were too lazy to do anything. Like it's just like I feel like the mate. Like you come in to a state that was made great by conservatism, by a small r, if not big R, republicanism, a red state such as California that was made great by freedom, and you come in, or you're born into it. That's just the way. I'm not putting it that way. That's just the way it is. You come into that state, and then you start to vote against all of the things that made it great, and then it becomes a shithole. And then you go and you flee the shithole because nobody wants to live in a terrible place such as that, where the rent is immensely high, and there are homeless people who can never be apprehended, defecating on your front porch, and you've got kids, and you're like, I don't really want to have that. That's kind of a bit of an issue for me. And all of those high taxes that you voted for, you're going to go and flee, and you're going to come to my state, you're going to come to other red states where things are great, economic freedom, yeah, it's doing real well, and in Texas it's doing real well, and whichever state, Utah in particular, it's doing pretty well over here. And then you're going to come over and you're going to continue to vote that way. So if you don't want to be around conservatives, that's fine, but you made your bed, go ahead and live in it. Go ahead and live in it. You can live in your pigsty of your own creation. Keep things that way. And I think, people who actually ideologically believe, like, this is why I kind of have somewhat of a respect for sort of the Bernie Sanders contingency. I might not be using that word probably, but I sort of have a bit of a respect for that, because call it whatever you like. It's just communism. That's Bernie has never, walked back any sort of his communism or his defense of evil regimes. He's loved every single one of them, so long as it is sort of on that red side. But call it whatever you want to call it. At least he's honest about it. He's pretty honest about it. And it's like, all right, if you're going to be honest about it and you're going to be committed, then you better go and you better pay the prices for those ideas. You go right ahead and double down, triple down on these big government failed ideas that have failed for the vast majority of human history. There's a reason why learning history makes you more of a conservative. There's a reason why growing older makes you more of a conservative. It's because tends not to work out too well for you in the end if you do not, if you deny reality due to your own ignorance for so long.
Struggling to think of substantial points, because
yeah, you are struggling to think of substantial points. You haven't made it like a single substantial point this entire damn video.
Better than a normal or progressive con experience, because I think the most common outcome is going to be conservatives whining and never really answering this question, and everyone.
See, that's the funny thing is I've answered the question. I've humored him long enough. I've answered the question. You didn't ask it genuinely. So why are you going to complain when people don't answer it outright? Because when you sit down with someone and be like, why did you rape this person, or whatever it was, like oh, no. What was the idea? When did you stop beating your wife? It's just like, that is the most unfair way that you could ever ask a single question like that. It's just like, that's a funny thing about that question is that I didn't do anything, and you're a piece of garbage for actually implying such a thing. It's like, why would you just sit down and be like, okay, so why did you do this thing that you didn't do? It's just like, thanks for if you want to throw out accusations, you could at least actually be honest about it and say, okay, I think that you did this thing. That is the way that I see it. I want to understand your perspective. Like, that would actually be a much more respectful way to do it, because, reasonable minds can disagree on what other people's actions were based on the facts that we have in front of us. And a lot of the time, there's many people in the business of obfuscating facts in order to, keep in line with the agenda. And I don't know, because I wouldn't say that this individual in particular is evil. I would certainly not say that, because evil actually requires a certain amount of awareness to what you're doing, and I don't really see that there's sort of that you know, it just seems like folly. Like this is what it is. It's ignorance. And, you know, I don't believe in stupidity inherently. I believe everybody is making the risk assessment that they have based off of the risk assessment system that they've built in their own minds from, you know, day one, from birth. You're using reason in order to figure things out. And some people just come to a different risk assessment. And you have to be able to try and understand those people and also, you know, exchange. So it's like, oh, there's something wrong with your risk assessment. And maybe they have something to say, well, there's something wrong with yours, and maybe we can actually learn from speaking with each other. You don't want to learn from speaking with anybody. You just want to say things.
I also need to think of substantial points, because conservative ideology has nothing to contribute to this fandom. Please prove me.
It's kind of hilarious. So please prove me wrong. It's just like, you don't want to be proven wrong. And obviously you don't, because you believe what you believe, but you don't know why you believe it. If you truly didn't want to be proven wrong, maybe you would actually get your facts straight before you just spew shit online. Like maybe you would actually build an actual ideology for yourself and actually build up something that isn't just, again, rich, isn't just this knee-jerk reaction to what other people's behavior and ideology appears to be in your perception. Because it really is just your perception of other people is as narrow as it is, and you just base everything that you want to do off of those people's perception. It's like, that's kind of unfair, everybody. A little bit unfair. So, but prove me wrong. I don't know what conservative ideology could possibly contribute. Yeah, because you don't know jack shit about conservatism. But you can prove me wrong, though. It's like, yeah, certainly, yeah, definitely. You would definitely take proof against your position. You would definitely do that, because clearly you've taken proof against your position before. Clearly you've actually taken in perspectives from people with which you disagree in order to reinvigorate the case that you have against their ideology. Clearly you understand the way that they think, and you think like you can put yourself in their shoes for a little bit and be like, okay, so this is the sort of perspective that it is. This is I think the thing. There are plenty of unwise people, and what I mean by that is ignorant, inexperienced, people who don't actually have a good grip on the world, people who haven't, you know, given it a good college try when it comes to actually understanding the objective reality in which we exist and how it functions. People who are uncultured, people who just, you know, don't know that much about stuff. You never hear them say something like, okay, well, so from the conservative perspective, they say something like this, and they will just say exactly what, you know, sort of what the entire risk assessment idea, because they are actually like, okay, so I can emulate this risk assessment by sort of reverse engineering and understanding, oh, okay, so the reason they came to that conclusion is because they believe this thing, so I can actually think from that perspective. They haven't taken a philosophy class. They haven't actually thought about, why do the people who disagree with me think the way that they think? It leads actually far easier into this theocratic, dogmatic sense that is rife in this video, that is just like, well, people just... They just hate things and they just want to like control you. But that's just my opinion. Okay, you know, maybe if you actually did some thought about this, you could say exactly what you believe, because you would know you believe it, and then you don't have to be a pussy about it.
You're wrong though. I'd love ideas for how future convention experiences can be even better.
I don't know if you do. I don't know if you do. I don't think you're actually willing to hear people out on that. I don't really think so. And because if you really did believe that, I don't think you would have behaved in this way this entire time. Why have we got to run out of water? And why is this pink in some areas and red in some areas? HDR, it's funny to have HDR on one monitor and like whatever this bloody like washed out thing is on the other monitor.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I have more to check out on my channel that you may like. Although,
yes,
want to see new videos early while supporting my work for only a mere $1, such as these.
Oh, yes, indeed, yes. Give all your money to the ignorant people. I don't know, perhaps go through a couple of comments, just a couple of comments. I don't really want to keep on keep it on for too long. The conservatives do anything for anyone except themselves. I think if you actually understood conservatism, that you would actually understand that there's really two main wings of conservatism, two main types of conservatism, and one of them is more about equal rights than the other. There's really equal rights conservatism, and so that is like very right wing, if that's sort of your axis on the dichotomy there. There's equal rights conservatism, and then there's common good conservatism, which is far more on, towards the center than anything, and a little bit more authoritarian, because you can't have equal rights without you can't have equal outcome without increasing the amount that the state actually induces or interweaves itself with your personal life. So sort of equal rights conservatism, or rights-based conservatism, and versus a common good conservatism. Rights-based is all about rights, responsibility, acts, accountability. You have to use the rights properly, and you have to bear the responsibility for the actions that you actually participate in. Whereas common good conservatism is sort of, it's further left. Absolutely, it's not all the way to the left, in the sense that we want everybody to have equal outcome, even if they're all living in squalor, then at least they're equal, right? Sort of the conceit on that side is that, the fact that not everybody has equal outcome is indicative of the fact that they don't have equal rights, and that's not true, and it's never been true. If you actually understood sort of the equal rights versus common good is all about actually we want to do something that benefits everybody. It's just they have a different idea of what benefits everybody. Common good conservatism is a lot closer to theocracy than equal rights conservatism. Equal rights conservatism is about as far away from theocracy as you possibly can be. It just has a little bit of an idea of, when it comes to there's a certain amount of a requirement for a religious and moral people. I actually forget which founding father said that, but there's an idea there where it's there is freedom, but rights, responsibility. You can't just have that unabated, because that ends up in more of an anarchical system, and inherently you sacrifice equal rights in that system, because you don't have the right to life when somebody else can come in, and there's going to be very little consequences in terms of authority in any sort of a centralized sense for somebody who's just I'm going to just snatch up those rights, and there's nothing you can do about it, because might makes right. So there's actually a pretty vast amount of heterodoxy on the right and on the conservative right, and if you actually understood anything about conservatism, you'd understand that, conservatives are not just selfish. Your perception of conservatism may certainly think that, but you actually have to fight perceptions in order for those perceptions to actually stand up to the test of time, stand up to the test of, rigorous scrutiny. Scrutiny, I think, is really the first step in actually creating some sort of an ideology of any kind. Is that, okay, I can't just believe everything that I believe, because I have to be a little bit cynical. Conservatism is inherently very optimistic in many ways. There's certainly pessimistic conservatives, but it's very optimistic, and it's a message truly of hope and control, and a lot in many cases of self-sacrifice. So I don't know where this idea exactly comes from, other than this individual's perception of what their amygdala has recorded when they saw conservatives supposedly do something that was highly objectionable. They're pretty active when bringing tributes to their kings and lords. The basis of their ideology does come from serfdom, haha. So once again, proving that you don't know jack shit about conservatism. It's really not at all what it is. And he mentioned this earlier in the video. They just try to conserve things. And, even when it means conserving like a kingdom, it's just I won't pretend as though any ideology today is not downstream of the fact that there were kings that existed previously. But the fact that there were kings was entirely existent of, there needs to be some singular authority that everybody puts that trust in, due to the anthropological halo effect. That we want to have one, give unto us a king. We want to have one person who just makes all the decisions, and who does all of the things for us. Who does acts in the common good for us. It's really an extension of mob rule, where the mob rule has been centralized into one person, and it really only works when it's pretty dang centralized. But also in the same sense that it doesn't really work when it's I don't know. It's impossible to be centralized along one person when the world is as imperfect and as it is. Like, you can't just consolidate all of that power and that respect into one human being when it's an imperfect person, and it turns out every single human being kind of guilty of all charges on being imperfect. It's kind of difficult to do. But it's like, yeah, I kind of don't believe in bringing tributes to kings and lords if those kings and lords are mankind, are men. I don't actually believe in bringing tributes to human beings, where it's like, I don't know. Have you seen celebrity culture? Have you seen like sort of the worship that has had? It's far closer to paganism than really anything else, because sort of the pagan ideology, the pagan polytheistic ideology, gods with an S, as you say obnoxiously, is that these gods with an S, they don't actually exist we don't exist to serve them. They exist to serve us. That was sort of centrally. It's like, okay, I do this for you, and then you give me far more in return than what I did to you. I give you like a burnt offering to show, hey, I like you, and then you were supposed to give me blessings in whatever way, whatever sort of way that you prioritize. So obviously, if I want to be blessed with wine or whatever, I'm going to go and burn offerings to Dionysus, or what have you. Monotheism is unique in the sense that it actually is like, you kind of exist to serve God because God kind of created everything, and it's not just like these super powerful figures that they just, I don't know, they just exist and they are super powerful and you just better do what they say, because there's actually no virtue among sort of gods when you put it into that perspective, and in a lot of ways the mythology that's behind in specifically Greek polytheism is, I mean, quite twisted and antiquated. I mean the sort of idea with Medusa, that Medusa actually, in the context of the original story, to my understanding, I actually haven't delved into this to an exceptional degree, but to my understanding, Medusa in the original story was actually raped, and then that's why she was cursed and turned into the monster that she was turned into. And it's like, oh wait, she was a victim, and the god Poseidon specifically was just not happy about that, and so he like cursed her for eternity because she was raped. Like, that's great. That's great inspiring story. That like goodness sake, that is really something. So, excuse me if I don't exactly think that polytheistic thinking is the best way to go about instituting a moral authority of some kind. It just seems like quite the folly in that sense. I don't know what this is in response to. Here's another video on social democracy. Have you seen what is happening in America right now? I don't know what you mean. Serfdom sounded more like communism to me. Yeah. In many ways, I mean, in its basis is not the same, but it ends up, communism is effectively just a shortcut to serfdom, because it pretends not to actually be for serfdom, because I'm all about equal outcome. I'm all about equal. Everybody should just all be in a situation in this where everybody has the exact same amount of money, except for the people who actually institute that system, because those people actually instituted the system and they have power, and therefore they kind of need the money, and it's like, but I really need the private jet though. Like I really need the private jet, and I really need the 3 homes, Bernie Sanders. Like, yeah, doesn't actually sound like it's socialism for thee, capitalism for me. That's what it is. It's like, I don't actually want actual like equality of outcome. I don't want equality of outcome. I actually just want to pretend about equality of outcome, because actually equality of outcome would mean that everybody who's doing well is no longer doing well. I don't know. Kind of sucks. Kind of a bad ideology. I don't know. Hey, how's you? I'm doing pretty good. pretty decently. I'm pretty chipper at the moment. How about you? Communism advocates for people who for people to own their own labor and work communally. This is the hilarious thing. All right, this is the hilarious thing about speaking with communists, speaking with people on the left, and you know, I learned a lot just from speaking with them, and I think I actually earned a lot of goodwill among those people, and you know, the people in particular who were my friends, who what would constantly happen actually is my friend, I met him on show, Coffee. My friend Coffee would you know, have these discussions, and I would just hear him out, and I would listen and try to understand about all sorts of things, and you know, not necessarily disagreeing, but I wanted to understand. And so one of his things was like, well, in communism you own your own labor, and it was just like, oh, that is a massive conceit. And I think, you know, with his willingness to speak with people in an attempt to actually get to objective facts, he was constantly finding himself at odds with people, because he would speak to people like me who don't agree with the same things, but he didn't actually take it personally that we disagreed. We would still be able to discuss, because that's what our relationship was all about, really. It was, you know, we can actually exchange in ideas. People would just get pissed at that. It's just like, oh, you actually disagree to me? Well, you're a Nazi. And then they just like disappear or whatnot. It's just like, ugh. It's kind of funny. Are you reading comments only, no games and stuff? I'm actually about to start, because I've been at it for long enough at this point there. But, you know, thanks for reminding me. I'm probably going to go and fill up my water, and I'll probably just be about like 5 minutes in a little bit. But I want to complete this thought here. This entire idea, it's like communism advocates for people to own their own labor. It's actually not the way that it is. In capitalism, you own your own labor, because when you own your own labor, you say, well, I am free. I can do with my time what I please. I can work on what I please, and I can exchange that labor, which is of value, for something that is of value that I deem to be equal. And if it's not equal to me, then I don't have to do that anymore, and I can actually break that contract or renegotiate that contract at will. That is actually freedom, and it leads with people trading in that sense, where it's like, well, I have something of value, you have something of value, and you want what I've got, and I want what you've got, and so we can trade for this. It's actually mutual benefit in that sense. It's the concept of comparative advantage, where it's like, well, if you do everything for yourself, it's going to cost a significant amount. There was somebody who tried to make a sandwich all on his own without actually outsourcing to anybody, and it cost him like $1,500 just to make like a Subway sandwich. And it's like, well, could just walk into Subway and actually have that for like 0.1% of the price, or whatever the breakdown on that is. It's a bit more than that. It's probably like 2% or something like that. So it's funny. It's like they own their own labor and work communally. Okay, what happens when you say, I own my own labor and I actually don't want to work, and I'm perfectly fine with working the bare minimum for what I want to work, and you know, other people can work harder, and I just don't want to work as hard as other people do, because I just don't feel like doing it. What happens to somebody who ends up in that situation? They get shot. They say, all right, face the wall, goodbye. It's inherently not owning your own labor. It's that the state owns your labor. And, you know, Marx wanted this, again, this is an actual conceit. Marx wanted this idea of this classless, stateless society where nobody could like there was no government, and there was no institutions, and there were no organizations or anything. It was just everybody as an individual pitching in for the greater good of everybody else. And it's just like the equal outcome in that sense. Everybody earns exactly the same, and it's just like, yeah, you don't actually own your own labor at that point, because what happens when my neighbor doesn't work as hard as I do and gets paid the exact same? I say, well, piss off with that. I'm not going to work as hard. There's no way I'm working as hard. He doesn't work hard. Why would I do it? And then, you know, what happens? What happens? You immediately become impoverished. And this has happened in every single commune, on a low level and on a high level, when it comes to, you know, this government top-down sort of perspective of wanting everybody to do equally and redistributing things. You know, there's a difference between having a willingness to do that, and it worked in the Mormon church. They called it, at least I heard it called the law of consecration, but historically speaking, there were different words for it, where they effectively did have communes, but they weren't communes in the sense that, you work as hard as you can, and the person next to you, might not actually work as much, but you still give it to them because it's for the good of these people. It's like there wasn't actually a thing from the top down that was coming by and saying that you need to actually give us your money so that we can reappropriate your money, the thing that you create of value for us. It was that, well, we're all kind of family here. We're all God's children, and that, everybody can sort of earn whatever they've got, but what they've got can actually be of great use to somebody else, and out of compassion of your heart, you can do so. And that's how every single family on an individual level works. It's from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. That works in families at the small scale because you actually care about them. But once you actually don't care about other people because they're all strangers, it's just like, no, get off your ass and get a job. Like, I'm not going to pay for you to sit around and do nothing by the sweat of my brow. That's actually not me owning my own labor. That's you owning my labor. That is just a fancy way of instituting slavery. That's inherently what it is. It's like, it advocates for people to own their own labor. I mean, it thinks it advocates for people to own their own labor. It does advocate for people to work communally, but it doesn't actually result in that. It inherently results in, well, if you aren't willing to work, then I guess we're gonna have to convince you through force. So either face the wall or pick up the hammer and get going again. Pick up the hammer and the sickle and get back to work, because we actually need to depend on your labor, because the state takes from each according to his ability, and the state gives to each according to their need. That's what it is. And it's an impossibility to try and do that without some sort of a state involved, unless you actually all care for each other so much. And it's really difficult to care for your neighbor. It's really difficult to actually, want to continue to interact with somebody like that, or to, by the sweat of your brow, provide for somebody like that, when they actually don't do anything to deserve it. They actually don't do anything that is of value in exchange to you that helps you to be motivated to continue to do that. Do it for her from The Simpsons. It's like, kind of works when you care, but it's hard to care for somebody who's just sitting around and not doing anything that is actually of worth to you. It's kind of difficult. Serfdom directly was not about owning one's labor while working under a lord/king. Your statement is very silly, haha. Yeah, you really made a good point there. It wasn't about owning one's labor. And that's actually why, because they weren't coming out of communism when capitalism came to be, when free markets came to be. They were coming out of situations like serfdom. They were coming out of, they got a little bit of a taste of some economic freedom, and then it started to kind of, oh, no, we can't let them have that. And then it was like, okay, well, screw this authority. The entire existence of a government is derived from the consent of the government, and I'm not actually there's no consent here, so you don't actually get to continue to exact taxes on me. I'm going to take my life into my own hands. That's not what communism is. It's not, I'm taking my life into my own hands. It's I'm going to sacrifice myself and submit myself for the greater good of the collective. And that inherently cannot work in a society of people who aren't a hive mind. And just because you might want to behave like a hive mind sometimes doesn't mean you actually are. Just because you have outgroup homogeneity bias doesn't mean that you actually aren't a separate individual from everybody else you speak to. I don't want to be stalling here, but owning the rights to your own labor would constitute private enterprise. Yes, indeed. This is entirely factual. You're referring to a hierarchical system where those at the top of the chain own the tools, land, labor the lower classes are using. So we're talking about capitalism in the US right now. That is absolutely a malignant attitude presented toward what free markets actually are in today's day and age, and I mean historically as well. People at the top of the chain, people who have done well for themselves or have inherited a lot to be able to do well for themselves, people who've got a lot of value that they can actually invest in things. Those people don't own everything. There's still something that you can get, and you can actually create more value, because this is the it's not the labor theory of economic value. It's the what do you call it? The whatever the other farcical idea is, that there's a limited amount of pie and everybody needs to get their piece. Otherwise, you're not going to get anybody in anything. It's every man for himself, unless we can actually have the collective just redistribute all the value. Socialism, big government. I suppose government is not good at creating value. It's only good at taking that value and putting it in particular areas. And so if it's going to take that value and put it in certain areas and redistribute it, which is inherently theft, are we going to do it in something that actually protects the rights of the person who you stole it from? Or are you going to do something that actually infringes on the rights of the people that you stole it from? Because that's kind of the purpose of government. It's not just to just do things for the common good. It's to actually protect the rights of the people, and there's a right of the people to actually own their own labor, that you can sell it to whomever you please. You don't have to sell your labor and your time to somebody who you don't think is actually appreciative of that, or you don't have to enter into a contract that you don't think is actually beneficial to you. Like under communism, you don't have a choice. You get kicked out or you get shot if you don't. So I don't know what you're saying. It's like, oh, those are the top of the chain, own the tools and the land and the labor. They certainly own tools. They certainly own land. They don't own labor. The only labor that they own is their own, because everybody else owns their own labor. If nobody wanted to work for that person, then nobody would have to. So it actually creates an incentive for that person at the top of the company to actually provide them with reasons to remain within that contract. It says, here's the contract, here's the deal. You can work for me, and I'm going to give you this thing in value. I'm going to give you experience. I'm going to give you money. I'm going to give you, benefits, whatever those may be. And in return, you are going to exchange your labor for something that is of value to me. Actually, of all of the value, because just sitting there with value doesn't actually do anything. You have to invest that value in something to make it move. And so it's like, I could just sit on $1 million. I could let it rot in my safe. I could let it Pablo Escobar and just rot in what do you call them, warehouses and get eaten by rats, or I could reinvest that into markets, and that actually is allowing that value to go somewhere where it's moving, and I can get something in exchange for it via my investment, where I pay off and the people who use my money paid off, because the only way that I get paid is if they get paid as well. Like, this is a pretty fantastic system, and it's actually derived from the reason it is successful is for the same reason that it is fair and just and protects the rights of every individual. Serfdom was under blood kings. Nowadays, capitalism allows for more social movement. Yeah, because it's actually your responsibility for if you want to do well with your life, because you are free. And freedom doesn't mean that you are going to, automatically get equal outcome just for being an American, which is just a ridiculous idea that so many of these people tend to fall into. That's not what being an American means. That's not what being free means. Being free means that I have rights and I have responsibility, and that's all me. I can act, and then I have accountability for those actions and the consequences resultant from them, and that's all on me. Nobody else can claim my acts, and so therefore nobody else can be accountable for my acts, which means, it's a trade-off, right? Because then you actually have to be accountable, and there's plenty of people who are childish and selfish and don't want to be accountable for the bad things that they do. You have to get over that if you actually want to be happy and want to be successful. You have to be disciplined, and discipline involves assessing whether or not your acts and holding yourself accountable to your actions, so that those actions can be, you've already paid the tuition. What's the lesson that you learned from that? Reinvigorate that into this scientific process of you behaving well. It's still based similarly to the serfdom system. It's really not at all. There is, the only reason that the president appears to be a sort of a monarchical system or a monarchical monarchic. Is that the correct moderation of the variation of the word? I don't recall. The only reason it seems that way is because Woodrow Wilson ruined the presidency. He's just a glorified DMV worker, and I think everybody will be happier if they didn't have to see him around all the time, no matter who the president is, him or her. It's just like, your entire point is to the entire purpose of the position that you have been elected to is to protect my rights. So go on and protect my rights, and you don't have to get in my face and preach to me about the way that you think things ought to be, or the way that you think I ought to be, or whatever it may be. You don't even have to be a big part of my life, because you can just work in the background. The people who got the resulting resources are the lords, kings, CEOs. It's funny that it's just like, yeah, we're going to lump all of those together, where you clearly have no possible way to have a representative government. Like, and you know, our government is somewhat derived from this. It's downstream of this form of government. But there was actually ideas, if you look into medieval history and when you look into serfdom, there were ideas there where it's just like, well, being a king isn't just you get to sit around and be rich. Being a king is that you actually have responsibilities. You actually have a responsibility to your people, to your subjects, and that, you know, they're not constituents, but to your subjects, that you actually are responsible for doing what is best for them. And it's actually a responsibility. A significant portion of it is of medieval history is like this, and to castigate it as otherwise, I would say that it is unfair in the sense that it puts all of the power, or at least a significant portion of the power, in the hands of one man or woman, in, you know, depending on who's actually holding the throne, and depending on the way that their political system works. But, you know, politics back in the day was like, well, I actually have to have a claim to the throne, and I generally have to have the support of my subjects, otherwise I can't really get much done. There weren't as many checks and balances at that time. Absolutely not. And there were many things that were highly oppressive of that we've seen throughout history. But it wasn't this black and white idea of, you know, they just sat as these fat guys at the top of the food chain that got to, you know, live a life in the lap of luxury. Very nice alliteration there. Off of other people's labor. It wasn't just that; it's that they actually had a different role in society. And the vast majority of people, if you went, and that's the reason why serfdom was so popular for such a long time, is that they actually did not have an individualistic sense until much further on into history. Maybe they'll throw scraps for those down below. That's the funny thing, is that if they literally kept it all for themselves, then they would never, like, nothing good could come out of that. You as I say, you don't just sit on labor, or you don't just sit on value and just I don't want to do anything with this value. It's just sitting here, and it's nice that I have it. I have my Scrooge McDuck money bin that I can go and swim around at any time I want, and it makes me feel really good, and nobody else gets it, and too bad. Like, that's just a cartoonish, childish view of reality. It's not just throwing scraps. It's creating more value. And actually, the vast majority of people who are in the 1% were not in the 1% previously. And the vast majority of people who were in the 1% are not now. There's a massive amount of class mobility in this world, and you can really come from any place, at least in this country, I should say. Massive amounts of class mobility, unlike anything else. That actually those equal rights, not equal outcome, makes it so that, well, I don't have what everybody else has got, but I do have the right to try my best to get there. Capitalism wants everybody to be rich, but they don't want anybody to get anything that they don't deserve. So it's like, you know, the entire idea of capitalism, and obviously back to this idea where it's like, do they do anything except enrich themselves? It's like, well, yeah, it's actually, you wouldn't be able to increase value for yourself if you didn't involve yourself in trading with somebody else. It doesn't happen. It doesn't just magically pop up out of nowhere. You can't just like mint yourself into riches. It doesn't work that way. You actually have to do something of value, create something of value, provide something to somebody. And nobody is going to work for you if you don't actually give them something in return. Something that is worth their time, worth their value, that, you know, and it's ironic because this is actually something that free markets have done within the furry community. And you can actually see this among people who may actually in and of themselves be ardent socialists, that they'll say, I hate being in a or a capitalist system, and then they go and participate in capitalism all the time, in an individual sense, not even in the sense that they like work at McDonald's or something, which my sympathies if you do, as somebody who worked in fast food, it's or just worked in food service in general, it's not the greatest thing, but you know, they'll be out there and they'll be making art on Twitter, and it's just like, you know, I get to 24/7 just make art about things and express myself and help other people express themselves, and they pay me to do it, and I love doing it. And nobody else gets to swoop in and say that I didn't earn what I earned, because I did. And it's all this individualistic, node-based free rights of, hey, I know my value, and if you don't want to pay me my value, then you can piss right off. You don't get to tell me what my service is valued for, and also because you don't get to demand that. If you say, well, I think you're too expensive, and you're not actually worth that much, then you say, all right, go find somebody else. There's somebody else out there who's doing something cheaper than me. Is it going to be the same quality? Well, it's going to be somebody else. It's not going to be my art styles. It's not going to be my talents, my quality. It's going to be somebody else's. But you can go and do that if you like to. You can go right ahead and do that. And they do this all the time. This is actually capitalism. This, at least, because I think actually the term capitalism, just, you know, if that term in your mind just, you know, bothers you, it's like, this is a meritocracy. And I think we all believe, or at least we all would like to believe in a meritocracy. People sort of more on the ignorant side of the left would just say that it's not actually a meritocracy. It's not really a meritocracy, because clearly if it were a meritocracy, if they had equal rights, then there would be equal outcome, but there's not. Why is that? Well, actually, it turns out that inherently hierarchical systems will derive themselves simply from the fact that there are inequities that, you know, life isn't fair. Sometimes people end up getting a bit of a leg up, or some people are at a disadvantage, and you just have to deal with what you have to play the hand that you're dealt. And that's actually empowerment. That's actually far more empowering to say, you had something, you had a difficult situation you were born into. You didn't choose this, but you can't do anything about it now, but continue to move on. And, you know, then your life is in your hands, not in like the politician's hands, or in the strong man's hands, or in, you know, the Bernie Sanderses or the Trumps of the world, where it's like, oh, this one person is going to like fix everything for everybody. No, you don't need that. All you need is faith in yourself and pragmatism and I don't know, the scientific method of just, well, if I mess up, I'm going to learn from it, and I'm not going to blame anybody but me, because I am in control of me. I'm not in control of anybody else but me. I need to just worry about what I can control. That's actually empowering. The people who got the resulting resources, if a baker makes 10 breads, very nice use of measurement words here, the owner of the shop may not pay them enough to even buy one bread. Right. So the math on that is that without the person being able to actually purchase all of the, you know, and this is why the sandwich test is so important, where it's like, okay, try to make a sandwich without doing anything industrial, without paying anybody else. Do it all on your own. Well, it turns out that it's a very difficult thing to do. You can cheat, and you can use cars in order to drive yourself, in order to get the natural sea salt, and you can do whatever you need to do in order to try and get all of that. What does it end up costing you? It ends up costing you an exorbitant amount, because it turns out that you can't just demand that prices be exactly what they are literally worth. Because this is the thing. It's like, well, I want you to draw up my furry character for me. This is obviously something that people do all the time. The commissions, really common in the art world and the furry world. I want you to draw these things for me, but you were charging me more money than it actually took for the cost of you to actually do that. So that's actually not fair. So you should be charging far less, because that is not. I'm getting jobbed by doing this, or not jobbed. I'm getting cheated. You're cheating me. And it's like, well, no, it's comparative advantage. I have something that you don't, and those are the art skills, and you have something that I don't, and that's the money, and that's the idea, and then I can execute on that so long as you give me the sufficient funds, and I'm going to return on that, and that's the way that I run the business. And if you want me to do things a little bit differently, I can go back and I can modify it and, you know, have that done in a jiff. It's a fantastic way to do business with people. Everybody does this on an individual level, but for some reason, when when it comes to some hypothetical nonsensical position, like it's like, oh, it's not okay anymore. I can guarantee you that somebody created this model, and it might have been you who created that model. I've got some 3D chops. I've got a pretty decent amount of 3D chops actually, and so it's like, you might have those skills, you might not have those skills though. If you don't have those skills, what do you got to do? Well, you got to find someone who does it and give them something in exchange for it that is actually of worth to them, worth their time and energy. And it's like, like you could not have done that yourself, and yet you exchanged money for somebody else. I can guarantee you that it didn't actually cost them up front, because, well, actually the cost of that was, well, whatever the labor is, plus the amount of power it took to have my PC on, plus whatever that I spent on my graphics tablet, plus whatever the software that I'm using, plus all of these things. It's like, well, I don't know, if you put that all together, where it's like, well, you bought that tablet, but you didn't buy that tablet just for the purpose of creating this particular one. You bought it for everything. So I don't know, if you socialize that and take, well, this is the cost of the tablet, and then socialize that so it's equal across the value of all of the people who've commissioned you, then it's like, this is just nonsense. You're trying to like add things up in a way that is just completely nonsensical. You do this in your own life. You want to make more money than and actually have more value than the amount of time that you put into it in every single interaction that you have with people. It's why you go to a job, is to make more money so that value can be used in whatever fungible ways you need or prefer it to be. It's an inherently just way to go through, and I don't understand why this stupid thing. If a worker makes 10 breads, they can keep the 10 breads if they need it. Oh wait, no, that's future. The owner of the shop may not pay them enough to even buy one bread. It's like, well, right, because he's got to make profit. And why does he have to make profit? Is because if he wasn't making profit, he would be impoverishing himself for the benefit of other people. Why is this a just system to you? Why do you think that you get to just impoverish other people based off of what you supposedly, quote unquote, need? There's a reason why there's an aphorism in the Bible that says, "He who shall not work, let him not eat." Because it turns out that in the state of nature, if you want to eat, you actually have to go out and you actually have to fight for something. You actually have to be a hunter or a gatherer, or a combination of both. But once you've exited the state of nature, that now you're in a society with other people, in a civilization with other people, that you actually have to, you can collaborate. You can live off the grid. You can just go and live in a random place in the middle of nowhere and nobody bothers you, and you just go and you hunt for all of your food, and you work for all your own food, and see how that goes, see how life expectancy goes, see how medical care goes and whatnot. You're not going to be doing so well. But if you actually want to exit the state of nature, understanding that there's going to be a little bit of tug when it comes to the fact that you have two people's rights, and they might actually bubble up against each other, and if one of them kind of tries to infringe on the other, there's going to be some friction there. It's kind of might suck a little bit. If you can actually accept that, then you can actually see, well, I have no right to demand of you your labor or anything that you've got that's of value, because it's your personal property, which is a novel idea among people who are as retarded as this. It's like the baker. Hey, we're talking about bakers, not bakers here. I understand you're a furry, but the baker labored, but did not own the result of their labor in the slightest. Well, they did, because the result of their labor is greater than the sum of its parts. He didn't own the labor, but he did purchase it. And if the laborer doesn't want to actually work, then maybe they can go and start. Maybe the worker, if he thinks, hey, you're actually not giving me enough money to make this worthwhile to me, so either you give me more money, or I go and leave and I create my own business, I create my own bakery, and I'm going to actually give a much better deal to the people under my own employ, and I'm going to impoverish you because I'm going to bankrupt you. I'm going to, compete you out of business, because I am going to be able to, use my value in order to create something that you haven't got and that you can't actually compete with. And that would be, fair prices, and that would be, etc. Then he would actually have to say, maybe I have to raise my prices a little bit because otherwise I'm going to lose you, and you're my apprentice, or you're my my laborer, my employee. So I actually have to keep you around, and in order to keep you around, I have to invest in you, because clearly I have to, you bring enough that is of value to me that I need to give you more money. And if you as a laborer don't have the ability to make that pitch and say, hey, you need me, and it is going to be worth more than what you're paying me right now in order to keep me. And if you aren't willing to pay me more in order to keep me, then I'm going to go somewhere else, and then you are going to lose, because my value is going to now be helping somebody else be profitable. So you better actually give this some consideration here. That is a good way to negotiate with this type of a situation. That person, so long as they're not being enslaved, is not actually so long as they are free, is in a much, much better situation than if they had to involve themselves in this fantasy land that you want them to be involved in, where it's like, oh, I own my own labor. It's like, yeah, that's what it is. You own it and you can trade it. You don't want to own your own labor. You want to own the profit. And that actually turns out that when you have nothing of value to offer but your own meat that is, put into a situation where it's like, I'm going to slog through and I'm going to work at this unskilled job. It turns out when you have nothing to offer but your own meat, and you have no insight to offer, and you have nothing else to offer, then you actually don't deserve more. And actually, if that's all you have to offer, then you are never going to have, a bread factory. You're only going to be an individual making your own unleavened rubbish at home and selling it to all of the people who are taking pity on you, because you're Ted Kaczynski off living in the woods off the grid, because you supposedly are happier that way. I don't think you're going to be happier that way, but to each their own. That's inherently just, you have the right. You also have the responsibility, and you have the accountability, so might not pan out too well for you in the end. Even though without the baker, the shop would close, for the owner knows nothing about baking. Generally, people don't enter into businesses that they know nothing about. Generally, the people who actually create businesses and who enter into businesses actually tend to know a thing or two about the damn business that they're running. Otherwise, they run it into the ground and the business fails, unless the government decides to swoop in, as daddy government loves to do, which is actually corporatism, which is not actually free markets. It's economic fascism, frankly. It's this idea of, I'm going to pick and choose where to allocate values and put it to whichever direction that I want it to go to. It's kind of not fair. But communism, when referring to owning labor, means you collectively own. So collectively own is a massive oxymoron. You cannot collectively own something. It's not a collective property. If no one person owns it, then, and if everybody owns it, nobody owns it, right? It's just there. It just exists. And you can use it, but if you don't use it in the way that everybody else, the dictatorship of the proletariat, which is just a fancy way to say mob rule. If the mob doesn't like the way that you use it, then you're going to get strung up. You're going to have to face the wall, right? You don't collectively own the land and the tools with your community, because you don't get the right to use the land and the tools in the way that you want to do it. The individual does not matter when everybody else in the society is going to, attempt to maintain control in that way. Because if you as an individual want to say, actually, I don't want to be a laborer in the coal mines, I would rather do something that is more meaningful to me, because I think I'm actually better at this, because comparative advantage, right? Like, I'm better at doing this, and so I should be able to trade that consensually with somebody who provides something else of value, and we can use currency, and we can have that fungible, and right? Sounds good? No, actually, you actually have to go and work in the coal mine because the collective good needs you to work in the coal mine. And then it turns out it's hard to have it's hard to have faith in a system that forces you to work in disgusting conditions and gives you no value in return, gives you no food in return. Turns out that kind of sucks, that system kind of sucks. Own the land tools of your community to use your labor to ensure everyone is well off. I mean, it's kind of funny because the only way to ensure everyone is well off is when you actually care about your own. And it's like, well, if you want to give to somebody that you're concerned about, be that somebody who is in your family, or be that somebody who you don't know, but you actually heard their concern, and then it's like, well, okay, well, I'm going to help you out. Again, this is something that's constantly in the furry community and just generally online, is that there's going to be people who, in some situations, they're absolutely e-beggars, where it's just like, help me, I'm homeless, I don't have a job or anything, but you got to help me. It's like, okay, you should actually prove that you are, you should not feel entitled to other people's money. If somebody is willing to give you something of value in order to sustain your efforts of pursuing happiness and doing well in life, then you should be incredibly grateful to that person. You should consider yourself a little bit indebted to that person. That, in 10 years I'm going to show up and I'm going to actually give you something of value that was actually worth that, or that I'm going to repay what you have paid me previously. This happens constantly in the religious community, but apparently we're the bad guys, just in general, because we have ideas that you don't like. There's still many nuances, but overall, people cooperate rather than compete to survive. That's the hilarious thing, is that people tend not to cooperate when there's a government gun that is being used by everybody in order to cram down what they think is better for your value to go. Where they think your value is best suited. Turns out that's kind of inherently quashing of the human spirit. That the human spirit actually wants liberty. The human spirit wants to do well, but we kind of care more about liberty when things actually come down to it than we care about all those people I feel so bad for. I'm somebody I feel real bad for because I'm in a really bad situation, Batman. I'm in a bad situation. People cooperate in a capitalistic society. They just don't cooperate in a way it's not cooperation to force other people to give you what they earned. That's not cooperation. That's coercion. That's force. There's nothing cooperative about that. It's a little bit evil, just a little bit evil, just a bit. So if a worker makes 10 breads, they can keep the 10 breads if they need it, but since 10 breads is too much for most, they give it to others who need it. That's the hilarity of all this, is that you don't actually get to profit off of your labor. You get to, quote unquote, be generous with your own labor. It's like, so, and inevitably, what does this cause? This actually causes if every one bread means one shekel, then 10 breads, right, yeah, it's like if you sell 1 shekel per bread, let's say every one bread is worth 10 shekels, but the baker makes 10 breads, and his labor, or the laborer under the baker, because generally you don't call somebody a baker, someone who owns a bakery generally tends to be a baker. I'm not going to go up and start a bakery anytime soon. I'm not a baker. But the business owner makes the 10 breads, and he also sells the 10 breads for 10 gold pieces, but it only cost him 1 gold to make 1 bread, but he gets to sell it for 10 times the price that he put into it. That's a crazy margin. Generally, those margins are kind of impossible. But he only, I don't know, let's say it took two golds, and one gold coin goes to the actual production costs of getting the flour and getting the etc., and then 1 gold actually goes to the labor of the person who he has purchased in a consensual exchange. By the way, it's a consensual exchange. If it wasn't consensual, then that would actually be slavery. So it's like, when you actually factor that in, then he's making profit, but you also have got him making profit, because if he pays him 1 gold per each 10 bread, then sure, he has to make 10 of them in order to afford 1 of them, but that's better than if he just had to make 10 of them and then try to eat them himself without a fridge, where it's going to go bad if he doesn't eat them himself. you know, as you say, it's too much for most, but so you give it to other people who need it. It's just like, okay, it's ironic that he's using bread because bread lines, like, this is the inevitability of this is bread lines, is everybody's going to be waiting in line for bread, because it turns out that when you actually say, I need bread, and then, you know, all of the people who make bread, you know, having to work super hard to actually make that bread, that they actually don't want to get bread because they don't get that bread. Because it's saying that it's too much for them, so they give it to others. Giving implies that they actually did it willingly. They didn't do it willingly. Any time that there is a system that attempts to be communistic, it inevitably removes their rights to actually. It's like, you own the labor. Yeah, sure you do. But you you own the fruits of the labor. Oh yeah, sure you do. But other people need it more than you do, so you have to give it to them. Okay, so I don't own it then. Like I genuinely, I don't own it. Do I own it or do I not own it? Because if I owned it, then I would actually be able to choose who I do or do not give it to in exchange for something that is good, right? That is of value to me, right? Apparently not. Apparently this is the way that people think about this. This is just economic retardation here. Economic, just drooling, mouth gaping open, vegetative economic retardation at this point. If a person makes 10 breads and merely trash them, others may not work with them in the future, which just disincentivizes selfishness. Yes, it does. Welcome to capitalism. It's actually pretty good over here. But also, everyone else would step up and use the same bakery to make their own 10 bread. Would they, though? And actually, do they have the right to do that? Because it turns out, if somebody put their money into building a building or purchasing a building that was of value, and all of the equipment required in order to create that bread, turns out you don't actually own that. Turns out that you don't actually own something, that you just show up and demand that you use it because you work there at that building every day. You don't get to claim that is yours just because you work there. Your labor is what you provide. You didn't provide the building. You didn't provide the resources. You didn't provide any of the value other than the value in your labor that you provided. You didn't provide any of the rest of it, so why do you get to keep it? You selfish bastard. Why? Because the knowledge of how to make said bread is also public. It's not actually public knowledge when it comes to just general things. It's not like, you know, you were born, you come out of the womb like it's said that every Polish person, every Pole is born with a sword in one hand and a brick in the other. It's like that, except like you just have a recipe for bread. It's like, this is public knowledge. This is our culture. We're bread makers. I mean, if you were bread makers, you wouldn't have to stand in line for them all the time. Turns out you actually need resources in order to create something of value. It's just economic illiteracy of the highest order. Of the highest order. From each according to their ability to each according to their needs sort of deal. Yeah. The government, the state, takes from each according to their ability, and the government gives to each according to their needs. I don't think the government needs to do that. I don't think the state has the right to do that, because actually, you know, you should probably be able to keep what you earned. And you shouldn't be able to steal from anybody what you did not earn. And everybody is exceptionally gracious with something that they didn't actually, with other people's value, with other people's money, with other people's property. Oh yeah, certainly. And this is the ridiculousness of, like, hey, if you see a poor person stealing, shoplifting, then no, you didn't. It's just like, oh yeah, because that's definitely yours to give. You know what it would actually be? And again, coming back to this, you know what a conservative would actually do in that situation? This person is down on their luck. This person clearly needs help. Maybe if I pull this person aside and talk to him and say, hey, you seem to be down on your luck. Is this true? Do you not have a lot of money? Can you afford these groceries today? Can you afford this? And they say, honestly, I can't. Honestly, I'm at the end of my rope. I have $0 to my name, and I'm $500 in credit card debt because the last time I had to pay, and I have no money, and I have a kid at home, and I don't know how I'm going to make it through this. And they say, let me help you with that. Let me give you a little bit, and you don't have to expect anything. You don't have to come back and give this back to me. I'm doing this for you because you need help. You could really use this. they're not just going to be like, well, I mean, if they steal it, like, it's not like it's my stuff. So no, that is actually you inherently being greedy, where it's like, well, you know, it's better for them to do it, because there's actually no human interaction between, you know, stealing something from an organization or a corporation or whatever, or just people you don't know in general. You can do this with mom and pop stores as well, but, you know, you hop into the mom and pop store and it's like, well, what happens if this is taken to its logical extent? If you extend this outwards, it's like, if everybody steals from the store ceases to exist. If everybody burns down the Target, nobody gets to work there anymore. Nobody gets to pay money in order to actually involve themselves in comparative advantage anymore. It goes away. And then all the value goes with it. You don't get to have it anymore because you're killing the golden goose. Every single time you do this selfish, inherently evil thing, you are killing the golden goose, the thing that actually allows everybody to have what they've got around us, this computer, this streaming site, this technology that we're using to be able to actually broadcast ourselves. All of these innovations would not exist if everybody said, it's every man for himself. We need to all get our own piece of the pie before all the pie is gone. Just bake more pies, idiot. Just bake more pies. Like, why are you entitled to other people's property? It's other people's property, inherently. Because I make poverty level income, and yet I don't actually expect other people to swoop in and give me what they've earned, because there are people who are still relatively poor, who are in difficult situations, who make more money than I do. And there are people who make less money than I do worldwide. Like, I'm probably in the bottom 50% of earners worldwide as an individual right now. It doesn't mean I want to stay there. Hell no, I don't want to stay here. I'm going to, you know, do something about it, but I'm not going to expect anybody else, and I'm not going to beg anybody else. I'm not going to go and petition myself or vote for somebody who's going to say, I'm going to save you from your own situation that you have power over, because actually, I don't think you have power over it. I have power over it, and only I can save you. I don't actually want to sell my rights to somebody who does that. I don't want to sell my own bodily autonomy and my rights, responsibility, acts, accountability to somebody. You know, I do have to bear the consequences, the burdens of my own actions, but I also get to bear the benefits. That's what a meritocracy is. And you don't believe in a meritocracy if you think that somebody who's making bread is as valuable as the person who actually created all of the materials that they are using in order to make the bread. Because it turns out when you try to reappropriate those, the materials cease to exist, because that value had to be created in a consensual exchange through other people's, the sweat of other people's brows. It's about you caring more about yourself and the collective of the proletariat than you actually caring about any individual's rights. It's part of the reason, well, maybe when it comes down to it, maybe you actually do need to bring God back into your life, because where has it brought you? It's brought you to an evil ideology. The lack of God has brought you to an evil ideology that's like, you know, I don't think that, oh, whoops, love that. I don't think that you need a God or a religious text in order for you to successfully to be a moral person. I don't think you need that. But it's a great place to start, especially for somebody who's advocating for something so outrageously evil. TLDR, you fundamentally missed what communism means. Self-awareness, please. Can I have self-awareness for 100? I don't think that's Jeopardy, is it? I don't know, girl. It's the... Yeah, piss off with that. It's like you fundamentally miss what communism means. Oh no, I understand that that's what the idea of communism is, but what does communism get you? It gets you to bread lines, not like all of the workers owning the bread factory together as the proletariat and solidarity. It actually it goes into the death camps and the labor camps and the gulags and mass starvation at a massive level. It's like, okay, if you want Leninism, fine, you go right ahead and you enter into a Leninist system, but it really only is good if you are Lenin. If you're anybody else, good fucking luck. Good luck. It's fine to criticize system. It's fine to use proper grammar. Like, I don't know if you were tired. I don't know if you, like, genuinely, like, ugh. It's not like it really matters all that much, but it's just like, you're gonna spout on about things that you are clearly not educated about at all, because you actually don't understand any of the Because all of this that you've said indicates that you actually don't understand what the counter-argument to any of this is, what the counterfactual to any of this is. And you are surrounded by counterfactual. If you actually looked into history, it's like every single communist socialist system that is top-down government control, seizing the means of production. What has it led to? Impoverishment, death camps, gulags. Never been a good thing. Never been a good thing. The counterfactual is all around you. All you have to do is open your damn eyes. Like, it's fine to criticize system. It's fine to criticize system, but you actually got to criticize what people actually believe, not Red Scare propaganda. Yeah, I'm criticizing what you actually believe here, because what you actually believe here is actually just red propaganda. And maybe we should be a little bit scared of it. Maybe McCarthyism wasn't that bad, because it turns out evil ideologies kind of suck, to use a furry term, they kind of suck horsecock, all right? Let's be real about this. Oh, shiz, I totally forgot I wanted to put in another action. I'll figure that out later, because obviously when I go AFK, I want to mute the mic. Anyhow, I'm gonna reevaluate a couple things. I'll probably see if I can grab some food. Should I end the stream or should I not? That's a question. I should probably end the stream, because I'm going to be really hungry, and I know I should go to bed at 8. We'll see how tired I get after I end it. I didn't want to actually end it, but I think I may just have to. So, indeed, that is the way that things be. I went over the time that I wanted to actually only ended up doing like 1 hour for this, but turns out when you get down to ideological divides, there's a lot more to talk about than some may think, in order to actually break down and get to a nuanced position on something like this. So, something like this, on everything, we're surrounded by nuance. You could go down to the atom level, the atomic level, I should say, and there's still going to be probably more for you to understand. So it's not like we have infinite time to talk about it, though. So I'd better head out, better get going. So appreciate the chats, except for one individual. You finally did something funny, though. Raincloud's bussy. That's funny. All right. I got to give you credit on that one, but you can piss off with your constant nagging. Nobody likes it. Ninja Fortnite. I'll be back hopefully today. I don't know. We'll see. Bye-bye.